Chapter 23:12. Naturally, Master 4 wanted to make some money. 10 million was not a small amount, and it was not a big deal. Luli had said that he could turn down the offer at any time if there were any problems. Master 4 left without hesitation. Luli stayed in the guest room on the upper floor of the tavern and waited for Master 4's news. Luli drew 2 portraits for Master 4 and said that Tooba Ing had just bought them from the haunted castle. Master 4 was a bit hesitant when he heard that it was Tooba Ing who bought them, but he didn't mind when he learned that Tooba Ing had bought thousands in one go. It was just 2 slaves, not a big deal. Luli waited patiently. He could not afford to be careless. He kept an eye on the surroundings in case the Tooba family would do something to him. If Fourth Master found a group of people and arrested him for being a spy, then he would die a wrongful death. He waited for 2 days, which was peaceful. On the 3rd day, Master 4 came. He entered Lu Li's guest room with a terrible look on his face. "You are in trouble." Master 4 cut to the chase as soon as he came in. "Those slaves have been sent to the Thunder Prison Mountain to mine there. That is a place under strict management of the Tooba family. I cannot do anything, so I cannot do anything." Thunder Prison Mountain? Luli had asked around about the Tooba family. He knew something about the Thunder Prison Mountain. This was one of the most important places of resources for the Tooba family. The Thunder Blood gems produced there were priceless. Naturally, the security was strict. Luli had never thought about kidnapping people by force. That was one of the most important places of the Tooba family. There would be at least warriors at the 4th tribulation. The divine patterns inside must be powerful as well. On the off chance that there was a strong shield, Luli would not be able to crack it. Luli thought about it and cupped his fists again. "Master 4, can you do something? I can add a few more paragons. You have done your research. Those 2 are of no importance. They are not worth mentioning for the Tooba family. This is difficult." Master 4 let out a deep sigh and did not continue speaking. Luli understood. The ring on his hand glowed as he handed over another 2 million divine stones and said, "Lord 4, as long as you can help me save these 2, I will give you another 20 million later." The 4th Master took it and casually glanced at it. His eyes immediately lit up. He hesitated for a moment and said with some difficulty, "All right, I'll try my best. I definitely won't be able to do it by myself. I have to find a clan uncle to think of a way. You can wait here for news." After Patriarch 4 left, Luli called over a waiter at once to ask about the Thunder Prison Mountain. After a while, Luli was intrigued. It wasn't that the Thunder Prison Mountain couldn't be taken down. It was because the Thunder Prison Mountain was huge. It covered an area of millions of kilometers. Although there were many patrolling soldiers, there was still a chance to sneak in. Originally, Luli had thought that the place was covered by a divine rune training hall. Now, it seemed that there were no divine runes. How could there be divine runes in an area with a radius of millions of miles? They could only rely on the soldiers to guard and patrol. Let's wait for a while. Luli thought about it and decided to wait for Lord 4. If Lord 4 could get it out easily, then Luli wouldn't have to take the risk. Otherwise, he would fall out with the Tooba family and could be killed by the powerful warriors guarding the Thunder Prison Mountain. 3 days later, Lord 4 came. He pulled a long face as soon as he arrived. He said, "Brother, this is difficult. Our family has been reorganizing our internal affairs. I have found a clan uncle and begged him for a long time. He said that it is difficult to get them out secretly unless we can bribe the patriarch guarding the mountain." Luli frowned and asked, "How much?" Lord 4 raised one finger and said, 300 million, and you must pay half of it up front. We have to bribe the patriarch, or else we cannot get 2 people out." "That much?" Luli pulled a long face. After a moment of hesitation, he made up his mind and said, "I don't have 300 million now. I need to collect them." "Lord 4, are you sure you could do that?" Lord 4 nodded. Luli nodded and said, "Then please wait for a month or 2. I will go and collect the divine stones. By then, I will need your help. You will get your share." "Sure, do it as soon as possible. The Thunder Prison Mountain is dangerous. Don't let the people you want die," Lord 4 said and swaggered away. Luli's face was clouded after Lord 4 was gone. This Lord 4 was a good-for-nothing. He couldn't do anything, and he wanted to cheat Luli out of his divine stones. If he could get them out, it would be a piece of cake, and he wouldn't have to spend 300 million divine stones. Clearly, this Lord For was either trying to swindle Luli out of his divine stones, or he was trying to extort more divine stones from Luli. Luli didn't have that many divine stones. He was afraid that if he gave too many divine stones, Lord For might get greedy at the sight of money and find someone to kill him. Therefore, Luli's words were meant to calm Lord For down. Luli decided to save the two himself. He wanted to go to the Thunder Prison Mountain first and bribe the warriors there if he could. If he couldn't buy them, he could only forcefully kidnap them and escape with the two of them. He went to the city and teleported to a small city nearby. After several teleportations, he arrived at the Thunder City. The Thunder Prison Mountain was 3,000 miles to the north of the Thunder City. As a matter of fact, the Thunder City was built for the Thunder Prison Mountain. There were many warriors in the Thunder City, and so were the entertainment industries. Tens of thousands of warriors were stationed at the Thunder Prison Mountain all year round. They would work in shifts and needed a rest. The Thunder City was a place for them to relax. There were taverns, brothels, and brothels everywhere. Luli wandered around in the city. He was relieved to see so many warriors. Those warriors were from the Thunder Prison Mountain. At the very least, it would be easier for them to gather information. Money could make the world go round. Luli stayed in the city for 2 days and successfully made friends with a minor commander. He also gathered a lot of information, but the result was frustrating. The management of the Thunder Prison Mountain was too strict. All the slaves had a serial number, and special marks were planted in their bodies to prevent them from running away. Once the slaves left the Thunder Prison Mountain, they would be noticed immediately, and an individual troop would be sent to hunt them down. Therefore, it was hard to get them out secretly. Was Lord For not trying to extort Luli for divine stones? Did he really have to bribe the patriarchs? Luli did not have that many divine stones unless he sold the cauldron of 1,000 transformations and other treasures. Was he sure he could get them out for 300 million? Luli was not so sure. He did not act rashly. Instead, he continued to gather information. After spending several million divine stones on that minor commander, Luli finally got what he wanted. He could do Luli a favor and find out which area of the Thunder Prison Mountain the two were in. As for how to get them out, that would be up to Luli. He suggested that Luli spend a lot of money to bribe the patriarchs in charge. Without the approval of the patriarchs, Luli would not be able to get them out. Luli didn't want to waste his time. He made up his mind. As soon as he found out where the two were, he would go and kidnap them. In a month, Tuoba Ing would be getting married. The most powerful patriarchs in charge would go back for a day. Only a dozen average patriarchs would stay. This was a good opportunity. Chapter 23:13. During the month, Luli had not been idling around. He had been preparing. He had been preparing to save people and to run away. It was easier for Luli to save people, but more difficult to run away. All the reputable patriarchs would be present at Tuoba Ying's wedding. Those who stayed behind were the less famous ones. He had more than 100 wind warcraft. When they attacked together, not even patriarchs could survive, not even dozens of them, let alone more than 10. Once Luli made his move, the Tuoba family would react immediately. By then, it would be difficult for Luli to run away. Luli had been studying the map, looking for a way to escape. Finally, he decided on a direction, the Marshall Plateau region in the northwest. It was not because the way there was easier, but because the families there held grudges against the Liu family. In other words, as long as Luli could get to the Marshall Plateau region, he would be safe. The Tuoba family was afraid to go to the Marshall Plateau region. The Tuoba family was the younger brother of the Liu family. Now that they were going to be connected through marriage, they would be on the same side as the Liu family. If Luli went to the Marshall Plateau region, the Liu family would think that there was a conspiracy and they would mobilize powerful warriors to stop him. The Tuoba family wouldn't go in either, which could lead to a war. Luli saving 2 people was not a big deal. He could even kill some average patriarchs. The Tuoba family wouldn't go to war with the Marshall Plateau region over such a trivial matter. Luli wandered around the area for a couple of days to get a clear picture of the terrain. That team leader gave Luli a lot of information. Luli also knew where Qin Zhan and Gan Lin were. Luli came back half a month later. Everything was ready. Now, he just had to wait for Tuoba Ying's wedding. That team leader came to Luli again, saying that he could introduce Luli to the patriarch in charge. Of course, it would be up to Luli if he could make the deal. Furthermore, this junior commander had also named a price of 2 to 300 million godstones. Clearly, this team leader was like Master 4. Seeing that Luli could earn more divine stones, he wanted to take advantage of him. Luli didn't have 2 or 300 million divine stones. Even if he did, he didn't want to waste it. Luli could tell that this team leader was not a good guy. Given his rank, he was not qualified to talk to the patriarchs. Clearly, he was trying to cheat Luli of divine stones. This was the territory of the Tuoba family. So what if Luli was cheated? If Luli, a second tribulation realm god, dared to make trouble, he could be killed in minutes. There were tens of thousands of warriors in the city at any time. Luli had made up his mind. He didn't care too much anymore. He was ready to make his move on the day of Tuoba Ying's wedding. Previously, he had been bullied. This time, he could disrupt Tuoba Ying's wedding, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Time passed quickly, and soon it was the day of the wedding. The city became heavily guarded. The number of soldiers at the city gates had increased greatly. They were afraid that something would happen. If the higher-ups blamed them, they would not be able to bear the consequences. All right, Luli was relieved to see that several powerful patriarchs had left in teleportation formations. He strode toward the city gate. Luli had been living in the city for such a long time that he could use the divine stones like water. The guards at the city gate recognized Luli. Nobody asked him if he wanted to leave the city. He came out from the west city gate, took a detour outside, went to the north city, and then went straight to the Thunder Prison Mountain. The name of the mountain was the Thunder Prison Mountain. It was not a place where thunderbolts would strike every day. That being said, there was a formation for gathering thunders. Every half a month, thunderbolts would strike. The mountains here were very special, able to nurture a type of mystical crystal stone. This crystal stone was very precious and extremely valuable. Luli did not go into the Thunder Prison Mountain right away. Instead, he went to the northwest. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin were in an area over there. That team leader had found out everything. Who is it? Before Luli got close to the mountain in the northwest, a team of warriors shouted. Luli swaggered over. He cupped his fists and said with a smile, "Brother Chun, do you remember me? I am Lu Jun from the Lu family." Luli changed his name to Lu Jun. He had met many warriors recently. Anyone who could spin divine stones like water could get to know many people. One of the warriors looked at Luli. He calmed down a bit and asked, "Lu Jun, what are you doing here? This is a forbidden area. Nobody is allowed to come here." "I am here for Commander Kuan." Luli cupped his fists and smiled. Then, he said, "Please take me to Commander Kuan. I have something important to do. Later, I will invite Brother Chun to the House of Happiness for half a month." Commander Kuan was the team leader Luli bought over. The warrior's eyes glowed when he heard about the House of Happiness. That was the best brothel in the city, and the price was exorbitant. Every time he went there, he would feel the pinch. Luli said that he could stay there for a month. Naturally, the warrior was overjoyed. "No way." Brother Chin shook his head and said, "You are not from the Tuoba family. You cannot go in. This is the rule. If I'm found out, I will be executed." "What are you afraid of?" A token appeared in Luli's hand. It belonged to the Tuoba family. Luli must have bought it secretly. He waved it and said, "I'm a foreign disciple of the Tuoba family. This time, Commander Kuan wants to take me to Patriarch Lu." Ha! I have a big deal to do with Patriarch Lu. I am representing my family. Buzzing, the interspatial ring on Luli's hand glowed. He gave one to each of the 5 warriors. He said with a smile, "I will not make things difficult for you. Just take me to Commander Kuan. You don't have to worry about the rest. What is more, I am alone. Are you afraid that I will make trouble?" The 5 took over the interspatial rings. They all smiled when they saw there were 100,000 divine stones in them. Luli was right. What trouble could a two-tribulation heaven god cause if he went in? He was only going to see Commander Kuin and then Patriarch Lu. As for what Patriarch Lu was going to do, they didn't dare to ask. Every place had its dark side. Asking too much about big shots would only bring trouble to themselves. The five flew Luli inside. He behaved himself. He didn't look around or use psychic power. He just flew with the five, keeping a low profile. In less than an hour, they ran into dozens of teams of warriors. They were at the periphery, and there were no mining areas or slaves. It was not hard to imagine how heavily guarded this area was. Luli's journey was smooth because someone was leading him. He ran into a junior commander on the way. Second Brother Chun said he would take him to Patriarch Lu, but the commander didn't mind. It was because Luli's realm was too low. The commander didn't feel threatened at all. Another hour later, Luli passed by 3 mining areas, but he didn't see Qin Zhan or Gan Lin. He was slightly anxious in his heart. If he didn't meet Qin Zhan and Gan Lin, but met Commander Kuin first, then things would be a little troublesome. After the time for 2 incense sticks to burn, they passed by another mining area. Luli squinted. He stopped in midair and stared at the 2 in the valley. He was filled with killing intent. Chapter 23:14. They were indeed Qin Zhan and Gan Lin. They had been held captive for a long time. Over the past few months, they felt they had been living in hell. They had lost all hope when they came because they had no chance to escape. The supervision of the Thunder Mountain was strict. Everyone was marked with a special mark. Once they left the Thunder Mountain, they would be hunted down. Their divine energy and soul energy were sealed, and they were tied up by special chains. The chains would send some kind of energy into them at any time, making them unable to bear the burden. People would die at the Thunder Mountain. Sometimes hundreds would die at one time. Everyone that entered the Thunder Mountain would die. Nobody could escape. Therefore, when the 2 of them entered the Thunder Mountain, they were in despair. Little did they expect that they would see a familiar figure today. That person was their boss, Luli. As far as they were concerned, Luli would not survive. They had learned that Luli had been taken away by the pure Heaven Blood Eagles. At that time, it was a big deal, and they all got the news. Could Luli survive after being taken away by the pure Heaven Blood Eagles? Even if he could, the 2 of them believed that they would never see each other again. Luli might be imprisoned in the pure Heaven Blood Eagles for the rest of his life. How could they meet again? Who would have thought that they would finally meet? And it would be so fast and so sudden. That was right. Luli had disguised himself and put on a special mask. Judging from his appearance, he had nothing to do with Luli. However, they had known Luli for so many years that they were familiar with something about him. Killing intent. Luli's killing intent was strong. Because he had cultivated the Slayer's move, his killing intent was special as well. Another thing was that the 2 of them looked at Luli. No matter how good a person was at disguise, the look in their eyes could not deceive people, especially those who were familiar with them. Therefore, the 2 of them could tell it was Luli easily. Luli felt his eyes were brimming with tears as well. The 2 of them were like beggars, and they were covered in wounds. Somehow, Luli felt sad. Without any hesitation, Luli dashed over like a dragon and reached Qin Zhan and Gan Lin in an instant. He said to the 2 of them, "Don't resist. I will take you away." Qin Zhan suddenly came to his senses and said, "Luli, don't do anything rash. There are many powerful warriors here. You will die." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Almost at the same time, many warriors in the valley came to their senses. Several commanders and a 4th tribulation warrior in charge dashed toward Luli. That 4th tribulation warrior stared at Luli and shouted, "How dare you make trouble at the Thunder Prison Mountain? You're courting death." Bang! A signal flare rose into the sky and exploded in the sky. Sure enough, Thunder Prison Mountain's defenses were tight, and their reaction speed was extremely fast. If an ordinary person wanted to cause trouble here, they would really be courting death. Luli did not hesitate. The distant heaven bead glowed as the Phantom King came out and dashed toward the Patriarch. Luli also released more than a dozen wind warcraft to charge at the warriors around. Just as Qin Zhan was about to say something, he sensed the aura of the Spectre King and got a fright. Ganlin was shocked as well. Both the Phantom King and the Wind Warcraft were horrifying. How come they were released by Luli? Bang, 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 there were several warriors around Qin Zhan and Ganlin. Luli dashed over and punched at them. They were smashed away, and two of them died at once. His distant heaven bead glared as a strong force enveloped Qin Zhan and Ganlin. They didn't resist and were taken in by Luli at once. Luli made up his mind. He turned to the warrior and the patriarch nearby. Roar! The Phantom King screamed and reached toward the patriarch with his sharp claws. The patriarch took out an iron ruler and smashed at the Phantom King's head. Bang! A muffled sound rang out from the Phantom King's head, and a few scales fell off. The Phantom King had sustained injuries that were not too severe. This bit of injury was nothing to the Spectre Monarch, but the Elder was in a miserable state. The Spectre Monarch's claws tore through the Elder's chest armor, and the Spectre Monarch's claws pierced through the Elder's chest and tore open his stomach. The Patriarch cried out miserably. The Phantom King's claws tore the Patriarch in half. On the other side, the Wind Warcraft dashed over. Instead of releasing beams of light, the Wind Warcraft merely used skills related to wind. A gale sprang up, blowing teams of warriors into midair and many slaves up as well. How? The 5 warriors that brought Luli in were dumbfounded. They were in high spirits when they took some godstones from Luli. But now, they had the urge to commit suicide. They brought Luli in, but many people saw them. Now, Luli had not only intercepted 2 warriors, but also killed a patriarch. This was a heinous crime. They had let Luli in, and the higher-ups would look into this. They were doomed for sure. Whoosh, 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 many warriors were alarmed. There were noises coming from all sides. Luli could not tell how many warriors were coming. He sensed more than a dozen powerful warriors were rushing over. Clearly, the patriarchs of the Mountain of Thunder were alarmed. Buzzing, 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 more wind warcraft came out from Luli's heaven separation bead. He had released more than 50 of them. He put away the Phantom King and hopped onto the back of a wind warcraft. Then, he waved his hand, and all the wind warcraft flew up toward the northwest. From the northwest, a team of 2,000 or 3,000 warriors came. At the front was a patriarch. All of them were filled with killing intent. They covered the sky and the earth, which was quite scary. Luli smiled and ordered the wind warcraft to attack. The horns on the heads of the more than 50 wind warcraft lit up. A surge of horrifying chi and energy spread out. Then, more than 50 beams of light shot out directly. Back off! The elder at the front narrowed his eyes and roared. He quickly moved to the side, but his reaction was still too slow and he was hit by a beam of light. If it were just one beam of light, it would be fine. He wouldn't die. However, after he was hit, he would not be able to control his body. What was more, he was at the front. Bang, bang, bang. Therefore, the patriarch was in a miserable state. He was hit by 4 beams of light in a row. 4 bloody holes appeared on his body. The patriarch breathed his last at once. The rest of the warriors were in an even worse state. Those that were hit by the beams of light were killed directly. Many beams of light not only pierced through one warrior, but 3 or 4 in a row. More than 50 beams of light shot out, killing or injuring 600 to 700 people in one go. The originally densely packed crowd of cultivators now had a clear path in the middle. Buzzing, before the warriors could react, the horns of the wind warcraft glowed again. This time, all the warriors were scared out of their wits. They scattered to all sides and ran away in fear. Unfortunately, the soldiers were too slow, and a few hundred soldiers were still killed. Let's go. Luli waved his hand and flew forward with dozens of wind warcraft. The wind warcraft was fast. They passed through the army at once. The warriors on all sides didn't even have time to surround them. Go, go, go. Chapter 23:15. The wind warcraft was fast. It dashed out of the prison of thunder. The more than a dozen patriarchs were average patriarchs, and they were not as fast as the Wind Warcraft. Therefore, Lu Li's escape from the Prison of Thunder was smooth. He didn't go directly to the Marshall Plain region. Once his route was exposed, he would be intercepted by powerful pursuers. He was fleeing towards the north, and his current target seemed to be the Peace Heaven region in the north. He had planned his escape route a long time ago, and every step he took was meticulously calculated and carefully considered. Lu Li was so fast that the average warriors could not catch up with him. Therefore, one of the patriarchs went to the Spring City while the others went after Lu Li. That patriarch rushed to the Thunder City as fast as he could. Upon his arrival, he exchanged a few words with the patriarchs who were guarding here, and then teleported to the Spring City. The Thunder City was in chaos. Many battleships took off and went after Lu Li to the north. Several patriarchs who were guarding here were sent out. Someone went to the Prison of Thunder to kidnap 2 people and killed more than 1,000 warriors. More importantly, 2 patriarchs were killed. This was a serious matter. It had been a long time since something like this had happened to the Tuoba family. What was more, today was Tuoba Ying's wedding day. There were many guests at the Spring City. What happened was like a slap on the face of the Tuoba family. Such a matter could not be kept a secret. Lu Li was flying to the north with dozens of Wind Warcraft. How could such a thing be kept under wraps? Once Lu Li ran away, the matter would be even more serious. That patriarch teleported to the Spring City. There were many guests at the Mountain of Cloud Dragon. The atmosphere was jubilant. The bride had been brought over. The ceremony was just over, and a banquet was being held. The entire Mountain of Cloud Dragon was bustling with noise and excitement. The patriarch didn't make the matter public. He only reported it to the family patriarch secretly. The family patriarch of the Tuoba family flew into a rage. He ordered the most powerful patriarchs of the family to split into 2 groups. One group would teleport after Lu Li, and the other would open a space gate to stop him. Lu Li must stay at the Spring region. Even though the news had not spread, the guests sensed something was wrong when more than a dozen patriarchs of the Tuoba family disappeared. If it was not for something serious, how could the more than a dozen powerful patriarchs of the Tuoba family leave? Soon, the domain gate of Cloud Dragon Mountain opened. There were fluctuations when the domain gate opened. Many of the guests were experts, so they could naturally sense it. Although the Tuoba family's patriarch did not announce it, the various families began to send messages, mobilizing their men to investigate what had happened. 2 hours later, the news came. A second tribulation heavenly god had kidnapped someone in the Lightning Prison Mountain and killed 2 elders of the Tuoba clan. Now, he was fleeing towards the north. Along the way, the Tuoba family had sent out several waves of pursuers, but they had all been defeated by this person. Now, the Tuoba family had lost 4,000 to 5,000 people. The family patriarch of the Tuoba family put on a long face and went to another family patriarch. Lu Li was about to leave the territory of the Tuoba family, and the other family needed to send powerful warriors to stop him. He didn't ask the Lu family for help unless Lu Li had escaped from the Dragon Spring territory. Report: 2 hours later, a piece of news arrived, causing the faces of everyone in the Tuoba family to darken. Lu Li suddenly changed his direction and flew to the northwest. He had a flying artifact that was fast. The patriarchs who had been teleporting behind him could not catch up with him. Not even teleportation? The guests were confused. What kind of flying artifact could be as fast as teleportation? Boat of Spirit. A guest shouted. He thought about it and said, "I heard that there is such a man at the Rakshasa Sea. He is being hunted by 2 forces of the Rakshasa Sea. He is also a second tribulation warrior, but he has a beast that is as powerful as a 4th tribulation warrior. I think it is him." "No, he is going to the northwest." Another guest yelled, "He is going to the Wuyuan region. He misled you and asked your powerful warriors to open the domain gate to the north. His real purpose is to go to the Wuyuan region." Wuyuan region. The Tuoba family was worried. The Wuyuan region and the Tuoba family were enemies. Once Lu Li went to the Wuyuan region, they would not be able to chase after him, and the Tuoba family warriors would have died in vain. "Brother Lu San," Tuoba family patriarch forced a smile. He cupped his fists and said, I will have to ask Brother Lu San for help. Otherwise, I will feel ashamed. I will go back now. A patriarch of the Lu family nodded. Lu Li making trouble at the Dragon Spring region was a slap in the face to the Lu family. Now that the Lu family and the Tooba family were in-laws, they could not ignore this. The patriarch of the Lu family teleported back. 2 hours later, orders were given out. The entire Dragon Spring region was on the move, especially at the city at the northwest. Many battleships flew up and formed a defense circle, ready to stop Lu Li. The mission of these warriors was not to kill Lu Li. They didn't have the ability to do so. Their mission was to stop Lu Li and slow him down. When the powerful patriarchs arrived, they could kill Lu Li easily. This time, they had mobilized at least hundreds of thousands of soldiers. The Lu clan did not believe that hundreds of thousands of soldiers could not stop one person. Since Lu Li dared to make trouble here, the Lu family would keep him here. Boom, boom, boom. At the northwest of the Dragon Spring region, the Wind City, a small black boat pierced through the air. 1,000 miles in front of the city, there were more than 100 battleships waiting in formation. There were not many experts on them, only 2 elders. However, there were many soldiers, about 7,000 to 8,000. Look out, they are coming. A patriarch shouted. Many warriors flew up from the battleships, unsheathed their weapons, and waited for the Godspeed boat to come closer. Attack! The patriarch shouted. Instantly, many Xian energy shot out. However, the Godspeed boat made a turn and moved to the side, easily dodging the attacks of the group of people. Buzzing, a man flew out of the Godspeed boat. Then, a pearl in his hand lit up. Dozens of wind demon beasts appeared. Then, dozens of light pillars lit up, piercing through the sky and shooting towards the densely packed soldiers. Spread out. The patriarch shouted in alarm. But how could the warriors disperse when there were so many of them? After dozens of beams of light, many warriors were turned into a mist of blood. Because there were so many warriors, at least more than 1,000 died in this round of attack. Blood was everywhere, broken limbs were flying around, and miserable cries rose and fell. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. While the warriors were in a panic, Lu Li's second attack came. Another round of blood was flying around. There were so many warriors. They were all living targets. Lu Li killed a large number of warriors, courting death. The 2 patriarchs roared and rushed over. Lu Li sneered. His heaven separation bead glowed as more than 30 wind warcraft came out. This time, they were targeting the 2 patriarchs. At the same time, the wind warcraft released profound meanings of wind to entangle the 2 patriarchs. The 2 patriarchs could only watch as more than 30 beams of light hit them. Boom! Chapter 23:16. They could not stop him. At first, more than 100,000 warriors were mobilized from hundreds of cities, and then more than 200,000. Hundreds of thousands of warriors and more than 100 Fourth Tribulation warriors formed dozens of intercepting circles. As the news came in, they could not even buy Lu Li some time, let alone stop him. Lu Li's wind warcraft was too strong. More importantly, there were too many of them. Lu Li had Phantom and Ghost King. Average Fourth Tribulation patriarchs and warriors could not stop them. Lu Li had been on the run for more than a day. Including the 2 Fourth Tribulation warriors he killed at the Thunder Prison Mountain, Lu Li had killed 18 Fourth Tribulation warriors. 3 of them were at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation, but they were all killed by the Wind Warcraft in an instant. It would be fine if there were only a few Wind Warcraft, but Lu Li had more than 100. Warriors of the Fourth Tribulation might be able to stop 3 or 4 of the 100 beams of light, but dozens? Even warriors of the Fourth Tribulation would die under the continuous bombardment. It was not a big deal that they could not stop Lu Li. What mattered was that Lu Li changed his direction again and flew to the southwest. Many patriarchs opened their space portals in advance. Those who had gone to the north opened their space portals from the families in the north and went to the northwest to intercept Lu Li. Lu Li changed his direction again, which made them feel like they were punching into water. They had set up several lines of defense at the northwest to make sure that no matter which way Lu Li went to the Wu Plain region, he would be intercepted by one or two super powerful warriors. They had spread out their nets, waiting for Lu Li to fall into them. However, Lu Li ran away at the opening of the net, which made the powerful warriors so upset. Many sophisticated old warriors cursed when they heard the news. Lu Li's Godspeed boat was so fast that there was no pattern to it. It was hard for them to catch up with him when they teleported behind him. They were going to teleport to the city Lu Li was at. However, when they arrived, they realized that Lu Li had changed his direction again. When they teleported again, Lu Li had changed his direction again. The Godspeed boat was slower than teleportation. It was difficult to track down Lu Li from the teleportation formation because of its erratic route. Also, the third heaven was vast. The distance between one city and another was millions of miles. Lu Li had gone through the middle. They could not do anything even if they were in the nearby cities. Lu Li had a detailed map in his hands, so he was very clear about his route. At first, he wanted to go to the Wu Plain region. However, he found that there were too many people blocking his way. He knew that something was wrong. There must be a large number of strong people lying in ambush in front of him. Therefore, he changed his direction decisively and went southwest. There was a territory in the southwest that had a good relationship with Lu Xiong, but Lu Li didn't need to go there. As long as it was safe, he would go there. He could see the focus of the defense from the intercepting troops nearby. The soldiers were unable to stop him, and their goal was only to stall him, giving the other powerful elders a chance to come over. Lu Li had done his homework and designed many escape routes. He knew all the cities of the Dragon Spring territory like the back of his hand. He knew which cities were big and which were guarded by super powerful warriors. Along the way, Lu Li kept an eye on the surroundings and checked the distant heaven bead with psychic power. He told Phantom King to break the chains that bound them. The Phantom King's claws were very sharp. Although the chains were very sturdy, they were easily torn apart by the Phantom King's powerful claws. Lu Li himself went into the distant heaven bead and gave them some pellets. At the same time, he poured some energy into the bead to help them break the seals. With Lu Li's energy, it was easier for them to break the seals. Lu Li needed them to break the seals and dissolve the special imprints in their bodies. Otherwise, the Tuoba family could track them down and it would be hard for them to escape. After making sure that the two of them could break the seal, Lu Li left them alone. There was no time to catch up now. If they could not escape, all three of them would have to die. When that time came, they could catch up on their way to the Netherworld. Lu Li flew on. He had arrived at the west of the Dragon Spring territory. In less than half a day, he would arrive at the Kunlun region in the west. Lu Li didn't want to go to the Kunlun region. He knew very well that even if he did, he would be hunted down by powerful warriors of the Kunlun region. Lu Xiong and the master of the Kunlun region were sworn brothers. Lu Li had killed many people recently. Clearly, most of them were from the Lu family. Lu Li's enemies were not only the Tuoba family, but also the Lu family. All the powerful warriors of the Dragon Spring territory would hunt him down. Lu Li should try his best to stay away from the territories that were on good terms with Lu Xiong. Well, I will go north along the border between the Dragon Spring territory and the Kunlun region. I will enter the Wuyuan region. Lu Li took a closer look at the map and decided on the final route. He used psychic power to the fullest extent. Once he noticed someone was intercepting him, he would turn around at once. He didn't want to waste any more time. Sometimes the time for one incense stick to burn could be fatal. Someone is intercepting us. Lu Li sensed something was not right. There was a strong fluctuation in the space ahead. A large number of battleships must be approaching. Lu Li asked Blood Fairy to steer the battleship to the left at once. The battleship was fast. In an instant, they had covered thousands of miles. But soon, Lu Li asked Blood Fairy to stop the battleship. There were many battleships ahead, at least dozens. As soon as Lu Li's battleship stopped, countless warriors dashed out from the battleships. Their weapons glowed as they began to attack. The lightning boat was already damaged. Lu Li didn't want to be attacked anymore. Therefore, he put away the lightning boat at once and went outside. His heaven separation bead glowed as the Phantom Master came out. Lu Li hopped onto the Phantom Master's back. The Phantom King's figure flickered and he rapidly flew away, evading the streaks of light that filled the sky. Those attacks were not only from average warriors. There were also 3 Fourth Tribulation warriors. Well, Luli took a look. The 3 Fourth Tribulation warriors were not powerful. He was a bit relieved, though there were many warriors here. As long as there were no super powerful warriors, Luli was not afraid. Boom, boom, boom. The Phantom Master was hit by dozens of attacks. Some parts of his body were injured, but that did not affect his abilities. Luli was not afraid that the Phantom Master would be hurt. He had the Quiet Spring, which could heal the Phantom Master at any time. As long as the Phantom Master was still alive, the Phantom Master would be fine. Buzzing, 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 Luli sent out Wind Warcraft one after another. When the Wind Warcraft came out, they would use skills related to wind. The skills of the Wind Warcraft were particularly useful for average warriors. Phew, phew, a whirlwind blew over, and those soldiers were swept into the sky. Thousands of soldiers flew over, but they were all blown into the sky by the wind magic beasts. Only the 3 Fourth Tribulation warriors could barely stabilize their bodies. Chapter 23:17. Wind Warcraft was a powerful beast. 1 or 2 wouldn't mean much, but when there were more of them, they would be more powerful. What was more important was that Wind Warcraft could use skills related to wind to entangle enemies. Even though it couldn't restrain enemies completely, it could slow them down and the rest would be easy. The ray of light from the horn of Wind Warcraft contained destructive properties. It might not be able to kill enemies in one go, but if it could hit continuously, the lethality would be horrifying. Unless one was a powerful warrior with super defense, once he was injured, the consequences would be severe. The 3 warriors of the Fourth Tribulation were not particularly strong. Naturally, they were killed by the Wind Warcraft. After the 3 were killed, the others were still flying around in midair. Luli had no time to worry about them. He took out the Godspeed boat and flew away. There was no end to the number of people he could kill. Killing them would be pointless for him. There were so many people around. If he didn't leave now, he would be entangled. By that time, when the most powerful warriors of the Dragon Spring region came, he wouldn't be able to run away. There were so many people nearby. The Lu family must have mobilized many warriors to stop him. There must be powerful warriors here as well. Therefore, Luli could not waste a single moment. He flew on the Godspeed boat. In the time for 1 incense stick to burn, warriors appeared to stop him again. But this time, there were no warriors of the Fourth Tribulation. Luli released some Wind Warcraft to carry the warriors to the sky. Then he flew on the Godspeed boat. He didn't even want to kill now. All he wanted to do was to run away. It would be pointless to kill more. There were so many warriors in a region. Several families could easily organize hundreds of millions of warriors. Luli looked at the map while he flew, trying to find the most accurate route. He glanced over and realized that he had to go to the Kunlun region first. He felt it would be troublesome if he went to the north now. His enemies would not let him go to the Marshall Plain region. After the time for half an incense stick to burn, Luli flew to the southeast with determination. The Kunlun region was to the west, and the Marshall Plain region was to the northwest. Luli was going to the southeast, which meant he was going to the hinterland of the Dragon Spring region. Luli didn't want to court death. He just wanted to take a detour and enter the Kunlun region, which would be safer. An hour after Luli ran away, more than a dozen powerful warriors came from the battlefield. All of them were powerful. Many of them were at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation. You didn't stop him again? The Battle Hall elder of the Lu family looked at the 3 dead Fourth Tribulation elders, and his face turned extremely gloomy. Luli was going on a rampage in the Dragon Spring region like a sharp sword. They had mobilized nearly 1 million warriors to stop him, but to no avail. 1 million soldiers and more than 100 elders. How powerful was this force? Even if they were to attack the Wuyuan region, they could easily destroy dozens of cities. However, they could not even catch and kill a small warrior. Where is he now? The Battle Hall elder glanced at another elder. That elder waved his hand, and a person floated over from afar and replied, According to the current information, he is currently flying towards the Gourd Cliff. Gourd Cliff? The dozen or so powerful elders looked at each other in confusion. Towards the Cliff of the Gourd. That was the southeast. Luli was going to the hinterland of the Dragon Spring region. They had stationed many warriors at the northwest and the west, and many powerful patriarchs were in charge. Now, Luli was going to the southeast? This did not make sense. They had gone through so much trouble to set up a trap. Now, it seemed that it was useless. The more than a dozen patriarchs were having a headache. The god boat was too fast. They had been following Lu Li and making arrangements, but to no avail. They felt Lu Li could stay in the Dragon Spring region for a couple of years. Unless he was very lucky, they would not be able to catch up with him. Go on. That battle hall elder waved his hand and said, "Send my order to all the Guardian Patriarchs. Teleport to the southeast in a net formation. Keep an eye out for information. We will not stop until we kill this punk." Too many people had died this time. Even a large number of Fourth Tribulation warriors had passed away, let alone regular warriors. If Lu Li were to escape, the reputation of the entire Dragon Spring region would be tarnished. The Lu family and the Tuoba family would become the laughingstock of dozens of regions nearby. Lu Li flew to the southeast. Everything was going well. Nobody was stopping him. None of the enemies expected that he would go to the hinterland of the Dragon Spring region. 2 hours later, Lu Li changed his direction and flew to the south. It was going well as well. There were some warriors at the south, but they could not delay him. 2 hours later, Lu Li changed his direction again. This time, he was going to the west. He was going to enter the Kunlun region. He was being chased by many warriors. Many powerful warriors were chasing him through teleportation formations, but they were all left behind. At this moment, everyone understood Lu Li's intention. He was going to the Kunlun region. However, it was too late. The area between the Kunlun region and the Dragon Spring region was too long. It was too late for them to plan now. Many powerful warriors dashed toward the border of the two territories in a frenzy, hoping that they could catch Lu Li by sheer luck. Of course, the chances were slim. The territory was so vast that Lu Li could not go in a straight line. Judging from the previous situation, Lu Li was as slippery as a loach. He would not give them any chance. On the other hand, the patriarch of the Lu family Hall of Warfare asked the Lu family to send a message to the Kunlun region, asking them to cooperate and stop Lu Li. Also, the Lu family would send someone to chase after Lu Li as well. Since so many powerful warriors were going to the Kunlun region, they must inform the Kunlun region or they would misunderstand as an invasion. Lu Li would not give the patriarchs any chance. He had been changing his route, and he never went near any cities. He would always go between two cities. Even if there were patriarchs in nearby cities, they wouldn't be able to find Lu Li after they got the news. 6 hours later, Lu Li successfully entered the Kunlun region. He found a strange mountain. He was relieved when he was sure that he had entered the Kunlun region. The Kunlun region was on good terms with the Lu family, but it was not their own business. The Lu family wouldn't be so enthusiastic. By the time they realized what was going on, Lu Li would have left the Kunlun region and entered the Martial Plateau region. The powerful warriors of the Dragon Spring region who were chasing after Lu Li knew that the Kunlun region would not be at ease when so many warriors were teleported over. They would argue with each other, and by the time the argument was over, it would be too late. That was the truth. Lu Xiong couldn't come in person for such a trivial matter. Only the chief patriarch of the Lu family who was in charge of external affairs did. He sent a message to a patriarch of the Kunlun region who had real power. The patriarch of the Kunlun region didn't mobilize people in a hurry. Instead, he sent someone to investigate first. The investigation took half a day. Lu Li was already on his way to the Martial Plateau region. He would be there in another half a day. When the patriarch of the Kunlun region learned that many warriors of the Dragon Spring region had died, including dozens of Fourth Tribulation warriors, the patriarch of the Kunlun region was not willing to help. Chapter 23:18. If it was a small matter, everyone would give him face. But when it came to their own interests, even their own brothers would do their best. On the surface, the Kunlun territory showed respect. They mobilized many warriors and patriarchs to chase after Lu Li. Yes, to chase after Lu Li, not to stop him. There were only some warriors blocking Lu Li's way. Not a single patriarch. Could they catch up with Lu Li? The answer was obvious. The warriors of the Kunlun territory didn't want to catch up with Lu Li. They were just pretending. The Lu family couldn't say anything since they had mobilized so many warriors. After all, so many warriors of the Dragon Spring territory couldn't catch up with Lu Li. It was not surprising that the Kunlun territory couldn't. Therefore, something strange happened in the Kunlun territory. Dozens of patriarchs and hundreds of thousands of warriors were escorting Lu Li out of the territory. The Kunlun territory didn't make trouble for Lu Li, and he didn't kill people randomly. Whenever there was someone blocking his way, Lu Li would ask the Wind Warcraft to blow them away. He didn't kill anyone and kept on going. The patriarchs of the Kunlun territory were satisfied with Lu Li's attitude when they heard the news. They escorted Lu Li all the way. Half a day later, they successfully sent Lu Li into the Wuyuan territory. The patriarchs of the Lu family followed Lu Li all the way, but they couldn't keep up with him. They could only watch as Lu Li entered the Wuyuan territory. The Lu family warriors were furious, but they didn't dare to go further. If they dared to enter the Wuyuan territory, a war would break out immediately. The Lu family and the Wuyuan territory were sworn enemies. They had a war more than a decade ago. Lu Li was relieved after he entered the Wuyuan territory. Even if the Lu family had scouts in the Wuyuan territory, it would be hard for them to track him down. When he entered the other territories from the Wuyuan territory, he would be like a dragon diving into the sea. Nobody could catch him. The problem was that the marks on Qin Zhan and Gan Lin hadn't been erased yet. If they could be erased, they could be teleported away. In that case, they would be less of a target, and it would be more difficult to track them down. Hundreds of thousands of miles into the Wuyuan territory, Lu Li stopped in a bare mountain. He put away the god boat. While flying in a low-key manner, he checked the heaven separation bead with psychic power. The seals on their bodies had been removed, but the seals on their souls were still there. Their divine energy had been restored. They were trying to dissolve the special marks in their bodies. How is it? Lu Li asked. Can the special marks be dissolved? Difficult. Qin Zhan opened his eyes and said, These imprints are hidden in our bone marrow, and they are all over our body. It will take at least 1 or 2 months to refine them. Unless what? Lu Li frowned. Gan Lin opened his eyes and said, Unless we take out all the bone marrow. Although he wouldn't die from having his bone marrow extracted, it would be a very painful thing. Moreover, his vitality would be greatly damaged. This kind of vitality could not be recovered without at least half a year. Then I'll refine it slowly, Lu Li said. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin looked at each other and smiled. Then they took out their weapons at the same time and stabbed at each other's backs. Hiss, hiss, Lu Li gasped. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin had lost their minds. They started to mutilate themselves and were going to pull out all the bone marrow in their bodies. Lu Li dashed in, looking at the two covered in blood. He forced a smile and said, Why did you do this? There's no need for that. Safety first. Qin Zhan smiled weakly at Lu Li and said, What's the big deal about suffering? We had lost all hope. We thought we were going to die in the Thunder Prison Mountain. Now that we have a chance to escape, we would be willing to suffer 100 times more, let alone this. Gan Lin laughed as well. Both of their bone marrow had been extracted. When they were done, Lu Li teleported the bone marrow out and scattered it in the wild. If the enemies were to track them down, they would only be able to reach this place. Quick, take these 2 divine pills. Lu Li took out 2 pellets and fed them to the 2. They looked better after they took them. Qin Zhan waved his hand and said, It's okay, Lu Li. Don't worry about us. We are not going to die. Let's take a nap. The rest is up to you. There is nothing to be afraid of. Gan Lin grinned and said, We can be together. Death is worth it. Lu Li nodded and teleported out. Then, he rushed into the distance. Without the mark, he would be like a dragon returning to the sea when he snuck into the Wu Plain region. It would be difficult to track him down. The Wu Plain region was peaceful. Lu Li wandered around for 2 days. Making sure that he was not being followed, he changed the appearance of the mask and his body shape. Then he went into the city. Then he began to teleport. But the cost was increased because he had two people in his interspatial artifact. Usually, teleportation formations would have special patterns that could sense if there were living beings in the interspatial artifact. It was fine to teleport with beasts, but more divine stones would be charged for humans. Luli still had some divine stones with him. He didn't mind that. He teleported along the way without stopping. Of course, the route he chose was conservative. He tried his best to go to areas that were not on good terms with the Lu family. He still had more than 20 million divine stones with him. Luli teleported away in one go. He didn't know how many times he had teleported and how many areas he had crossed. He was exhausted. Skyheart City? 13 days later, Luli checked the city and the map. He was relieved to see that he had crossed more than 40 areas when he was away from the Dragon Spring region. He found a random tavern and slept. After a day's sleep, he found a chamber of commerce in the city and sold many treasures, elixirs, and materials. He killed dozens of Fourth Tribulation warriors at the Dragon Spring region. He collected some of their interspatial rings, which contained many treasures. After he sold all of them and the divine stones in the interspatial rings, Luli had more than 40 million divine stones with him. He continued to teleport. The further he went, the safer he would be. 1 month later, in a tavern in a small town of the Furong region, 3 men sat together. 2 of them were pale, and their breaths were weak. They seemed to be in poor health. However, their eyes were bright and full of expression, and their faces were full of smiles. "Come on, let's drink to the reunion of us 3 brothers." Qin laughed. He was not fully recovered yet, but he could drink. Ganlin and Luli picked up their goblets and drank 3 or 4 in a row. After a round of drinking, Qin told Ganlin about his experience. Qin and Ganlin ran away with Patriarch Gue. Warriors of the Frozen Valley didn't go after them. They followed Patriarch Gue to a place. That place was very chaotic. The 2 of them left after staying for a while, but they didn't expect to be targeted. A Fourth Tribulation warrior took action and captured the 2 of them. "Okay, enough about us. Tell me about you." Qin shook his head and asked with curiosity, "Luli, how did you escape from the pure heaven blood eagle race?" "It's a long story." Luli drank a goblet of wine and told them what happened over the years. Qin and Ganlin listened with their hearts pounding. After listening, Qin and Ganlin glanced at each other. Both of them felt a little ashamed of their inferiority. Qin sighed with emotion, worthy of being the monstrous genius that came from our second heavenly layer. Even in such a dangerous situation, he can still turn peril into safety time and time again. "Luli, I really admire you. Let's not talk about this." Chapter 23:19. During the month, the Devil's Sea and the Dragon Spring territory did not stop, but that had nothing to do with Luli. It was hard to track him down from such a far distance. What was more, Luli would not stay here for long. He would teleport on his way. After a night of drinking, the 2 went back to cultivate and recuperate. Luli continued to teleport on his way. Teleportation cost divine stones. By Godspeed boat, the speed was almost the same and it didn't cost divine stones. That being said, Luli could not use this artifact at will. There were only a few Godspeed boats at the entire Ziyang land. Once Luli used the Godspeed boat, his whereabouts would be discovered. In that case, not only the Devil's Sea and the Dragon Spring territory, the Blood Eagles race would send powerful warriors to hunt him down. Therefore, it was better to keep a low profile. The teleportation cost was not a big deal. Divine stones were worldly possessions that could be earned after they were spent. If that doesn't work, then I'll just rob. Robbing is always the fastest way to make money. Luli teleported to the west. Even though the Ziyang land was the smallest one, it was vast. Luli calculated that it would cost at least 3 billion divine stones for the 3 of them to teleport all the way there. 7 days later, Luli stopped. That was because there were no more divine stones left. All of them had been used up. Luli found a tavern and took out all the interspatial rings he had. He checked the treasures in the interspatial rings one by one and took out everything that could be sold for divine stones. After some time, Luli found hundreds of decent treasures and materials. He went to the largest chamber of commerce in the city to sell them. Who would have thought that a blind cat would run into a dead mouse? There were actually some treasures that were quite valuable, selling them for more than 10 million divine stones. Luli was not worried now that he had divine stones. He hurried on his way. That being said, the 10 million divine stones would be used up in half a month. I can rest for a few days. Luli checked the map. He was at the south-central part of the Ziyang land. He could not tell how far away he was from the Devil's Sea. Even if Luo Fian, Su Yuqin, and the Tuoba family knew he was here, they wouldn't come after him. This place was called the Dream Mist region, and the Lord was a lady. Instead of going to the main city, Luli stayed in a small city. He released Qin Zhan and Ganlin. The two of them recuperated for a period of time and recovered a lot. The three of them stayed in the small town for a couple of days. Luli didn't stop either. He kept asking for information. Since they were out of divine stones, they had to earn divine stones. Otherwise, if the three of them flew all the way, who knew when they would reach the chilly winter continent? After 3 days of probing, Luli felt more confident. There was no easy way to earn divine stones in Dream Mist territory, but there was a place far away from these two territories. Windfire territory. This territory had been in chaos for 100 years, and several large families had been fighting for the position of lord. However, the major families were evenly matched, and they all had the support of the other lords' families, so they were in a deadlock. The result of this stalemate was chaos. This place had been in chaos for 100 years. It was so chaotic that ordinary small martial artists didn't dare to go out. Otherwise, they would either be killed or robbed. There were many bandits here, and they weren't just one or two people, but an entire army. Luli's eyes glowed when he heard about the Wandering Bandit Legion. He once robbed a Wandering Bandit Legion when he was at the Second Heaven. He got the ghost bead from that. Now that Luli had the Wind Warcraft and the Spectre King, he wouldn't feel any pressure as long as he didn't run into warriors at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation or the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation. How could there be super powerful warriors in an average bandit legion? Therefore, as long as he kept a low profile and was lucky, robbing would be easy. Each bandit legion had hundreds or thousands of members. Luli could get more than 1 billion divine stones by robbing more than a dozen legions. Luli found Qin Zhan and Ganlin and said, "I will be away for a couple of months. You can stay here for a couple of months. I will be back in 3 or 4 months at most. By then, we can teleport away from the Ziyang continent directly." Qin Zhan and Ganlin were surprised. Qin Zhan was a straightforward man. He said at once, "No, we will go wherever you go. We will die together, even if we have to die. I don't want to be separated again." Ganlin thought about it and asked, "Luli, are you going to get divine stones? We will be in the heaven separation bead. Will we be in your way? Is it dangerous?" "Of course. After all, they will not give you divine stones for nothing." Luli smiled lightly and said, "I'm going to the Windfire territory. It is not far from here. There are many bandit legions there. You have not recovered from your wounds yet. You might as well stay here and recuperate. Don't worry. I can escape from the Blood Eagles and the Sea of Demons. This is nothing. I'm sure I can get enough divine stones back easily." Alas, alas, Qin Zhan's expression turned gloomy. He sighed and said, "Luli, blame us for being useless. We can't help you, and we will only drag you down." Qin Zhan and Ganlin were not particularly outstanding. They had made some progress over the years, but it was not obvious. It was pointless to leave the Wind-Fire territory with Luli. There was nothing they could do apart from staying in the Heaven Separation Bead. There is no such thing. Luli patted Qin Zhan's shoulder and said, "Everyone has their own destiny. Maybe when your destiny comes, you will soar up to the sky at once. By then, I will need you to protect me." Okay. Qin Zhan knew Luli was trying to comfort him, but he felt a bit better. He looked at Ganlin and nodded and said, "Okay, go ahead. We will stay here. We will wait for you to come back. If you don't come back, we will have to stay here forever." Luli smiled. He didn't mind too much. He was quite confident this time. He had found out that only 3 of the bandit legions were particularly strong. They had powerful warriors at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation. The rest of the legions were not strong. Even if he could not defeat them, at least he could run away. At the Wind-Fire territory, as long as he didn't provoke the big families and the 3 legions, he could do whatever he wanted. Of course, there were some old demons living in seclusion there. Luli wouldn't be too arrogant. He just wanted to make a fortune in a low-key manner. Luli didn't go to the Wind-Fire territory right away after he said goodbye to the 2. Instead, he bought a map and spent some divine stones to get some information before he teleported there. 5 days later, Luli arrived at a small town outside the Wind-Fire territory. To the west of the town was the territory of the Wind-Fire territory. The town was bustling with people. It was also a place to dispose of stolen goods. Luli stayed in the town for 3 days, mainly to get information. He had spent 1 million divine stones in 3 days. Luli basically knew the situation of the Wind-Fire territory. Let's go. Chapter 23:20. The Wind-Fire territory was chaotic. Luli had only been here for 1 day, and he had already been robbed by 4 groups of people. But there were not many of them, just a few of them. They were not powerful either. They were all average warriors of the Third Tribulation. Clearly, these people thought Luli was at the Second Tribulation realm and thought he was a pushover. They wanted to rob him. Even a mosquito was meat. Every bite counted. Those people had a miserable ending. They were all robbed by Luli. Their interspatial rings were taken by Luli, and even their armors and weapons were looted by Luli. Only a thin robe was left. Luli didn't want to waste his time with these people. What treasures could these small bandits have? It was a waste of time. He had been investigating for days, and his target was clear. He wanted to go to a mountain in the middle of the Wind-Fire territory. The Wind Cloud Mountain. This mountain was huge. There were dozens of broken voids and dangerous places. The terrain here was so special that it could not be described as chaotic. Therefore, this place attracted many groups of bandits. It was said that there were more than 100 groups of bandits in different sizes and 5 large ones. One of them was the largest group of bandits in the Wind-Fire territory. Luli didn't dare to mess with the largest one. The rest of the groups were his targets. If he could rob half of them, he could get more than 1 billion divine stones. He might as well focus on one place rather than wandering around the world. Luli hurried on his way in a low profile. He found a city and teleported there. It was relatively safe in the city. The cities were divided up by several families. Of course, no place in the Wind-Fire territory was absolutely safe. The families in the city might do something to you. After 2 days of teleportation, Luli arrived at a big city near the Wind Cloud Mountain, the Sealed Heaven City. This city didn't belong to any family of the Wind-Fire territory. It belonged to the largest group of bandits in the Wind Cloud Mountain, the Heaven Wings Legion. This city was also the location of the largest black market in the entire Wind-Fire territory. Everything that could not see the light of day in the Wind-Fire territory was sold here. As long as you had good treasures, they could be sold at a high price here. It is really messy here. Luli walked around in the city and found that there were people selling beautiful alien race girls on the street. The girls were dressed in revealing clothes. There seemed to be no morality or law here. Everything was legal here. Of course, one could not use force at will. Once they left the city, they could kill until the sky was dark and no one would care about them. Luli wandered around the city. He had only 1 million divine stones left. He spent them all in exchange for information. There were many intelligence dealers here. As long as you had divine stones, they could tell you how many concubines the boss of the Sky Wing Legion had. Luli knew the drifting bandits like the back of his hand, even before he entered the stormy mountain. He had a map in his hand. Many of the mountains in the Windy Mountain Range were marked with the names of the major powers, as well as various notes. The central peak of the Wind Cloud Mountains was Heaven Sealing Mountain. This was where the Sky Wing Legion was stationed. Almost no one dared to approach this place, as anyone who did would be killed without question. The leader of the Sky Wing Corps Kanzi, was at the late 4th stage and had been famous for many years. Not only was he a famous person in the Windfire territory, but he was also very famous in the dozens of territories nearby. It was because this person wasn't a purebred human, but rather a member of the heavenly silkworm race, possessing a strange divine ability that was extremely difficult to deal with. Granted, he was only at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation Realm, but many warriors at the peak of the Fourth Tribulation Realm didn't want to be enemies with him. Kanzi was a cold person. He almost never contacted anyone. He was cold to his subordinates as well. Therefore, the bandits nearby had nothing to do with him. They were the overlords of the Stormy Mountain Range. Their targets were the big families. They didn't even bother to rob the average warriors, but the Skywing Legion rarely did anything in recent years. Ever since the Sealed Heaven City became the black market center of the Windfire territory, the Skywing Legion had made a fortune with this city. Everything that was sold had to be taxed. Entry and exit required divine stones. Even food and lodging here required divine stones. Owning the Sealed Heaven City was equivalent to owning a gold mine. What was more, the Skywing Legion had robbed all the families in the Windfire territory that could be robbed. The remaining families were too big for Kanzi to mess with. Naturally, he didn't bother to do anything to them. The bandits at the Stormy Mountain Range had nothing to do with Kanzi. This piece of information was too important for Luli. If one of the legions had something to do with Kanzi, then Luli might not be able to get out once he went in. This one, sky-powerful legion. Luli thought about it for more than 2 hours and chose a legion that was rich. It was said that this legion had just robbed a middle-sized city. All the families in the city were robbed clean. Now, this legion was overflowing with wealth. At night, Luli left the city and snuck into the mountains like a fox. For powerful warriors, there was no difference between day and night. After all, there were fewer people walking at night, which made it easier to hide. Luli walked among the mountains. The Stormy Mountain Range was especially large, comparable to the Mount Yunhua. Luli sneaked along according to the map. He tried not to disturb the small legions nearby, mainly for fear of trouble. Who is it? 2 hours later, inevitably, Luli alarmed a scout of a legion. With a trace of Tao, the average scouts would not be able to escape his notice. But this scout was clearly of a special race. He was lying on the mountain, no different from a piece of wood. There was no sign of life or energy fluctuation. If he didn't move, he would be a piece of wood. Whoosh! Luli reacted quickly. He sped up and reached the warrior in an instant. Then he punched at him. Bang! The scout's head was crushed. He didn't even have time to send out a signal. That being said, there was still some energy fluctuation. From a distance came some noises. Clearly, the scouts nearby were alarmed. Moo! Luli didn't want to expose himself and attract unnecessary trouble. He sped up and flew into the distance. The scouts behind him could not catch up with him. They were shaken off easily. After an hour, Luli slowed down. This was the territory of a legion of roving bandits. The scouts wouldn't come after him. Luli had to take a detour carefully. He was here to rob, not to invade a city. He didn't have enough power to sweep across the entire Stormy Mountain Range. He had to sneak into the villages and get as many as he could. If he was too high profile, he would be struck by lightning. This time, he was more careful. He didn't want to get into conflict with the small legions. If he attracted the attention of the bigger legions, it would be inconvenient for him to take action. This time he was safe. 4 hours later, Luli finally arrived at the foot of a huge mountain. Towering Heaven Peak. This legion was called Towering Heaven Legion. It was famous in this area. The leader's nickname was Towering Heaven. He was a warrior at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation. He was cruel and merciless. He was not from this place. He came here and joined a legion. Later, he killed the leader and became the new leader. Blood Fairy set up the runes. Chapter 23-21. The way back was easy to arrange. Blood Fairy was fast. In the time for 3 incense sticks to burn, everything was ready. Luli decided to take action. Now that he was here, there was no need to be secretive. Luli was ready to take action. Whoosh, he flew up and no longer tried to hide his energy. At the same time, he used psychic power to check the entire mountain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Luli's action was like poking a hornet's nest. Many warriors flew up from the mountain and locked onto Luli with psychic power. There was also a ferocious aura spreading out, as if a few mad dragons had been awakened. Who is it? How dare you? Courting death. Second Tribulation Warrior? How can a Second Tribulation Warrior be so arrogant now? Kill him. Many castles and caves were built in the mountain. At least 1,000 people flew out from the caves. Most of them were Third Tribulation Warriors. 2 of them were Fourth Tribulation Warriors. But the 2 Fourth Tribulation Warriors threw Luli a glance. They didn't intend to do anything. Hundreds of warriors had already gone down. It was not their turn to do anything. The hundreds of warriors were not enough for Luli. He didn't even release the Ghost King or the Wind Warcraft. Instead, he sent out the Worms of the Void and sent them toward the hundreds of warriors. After the evolution of the Worms of the Void, it was easy for him to deal with the Third Tribulation Warriors. Luli dashed over and swung his fists, one for each warrior. Many warriors landed on him, but they could not inflict serious injuries on him. Boom, 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 one warrior after another was killed by Luli. The Worms of the Void were eaten up as well. After Luli had killed more than 70 warriors, the 2 Fourth Tribulation Warriors could not sit still anymore. From the castles on the mountain peak, some powerful psychic power came over and began to pay attention to the situation. Move! One of the 2 Fourth Tribulation Warriors shouted and rushed over. Luli was a supreme being with good defense and offense. That being said, he was a puny insect to the 2 warriors. They could crush him easily. That was what they did. One of them had a net in his hand and threw it at Luli. The other one had a dagger in his hand. The dagger was glowing in a dark blue light. He stabbed at Luli's back. As Luli's heaven separation bead glowed, the Phantom King and the Phantom Shadow came out and dashed toward one person each. In the instant that the Phantom King and Ghostly Shadow appeared, the surrounding space seemed to have become slightly colder. Countless cultivators revealed looks of astonishment. The auras of the Phantom King and Gue Ing were too horrifying. For a moment, everyone was startled. The 2 Fourth Tribulation martial artists were also shocked. They were stunned for a moment. The Spectre King and Gue Ing didn't hesitate. They rushed towards the huge net and ruthlessly clawed at it. The net was directly torn apart. What a pity! This net was a treasure, and if it was sold, it would most likely be worth 1 million godstones. Now that it had been torn apart by the Phantom King, it was like 1 million godstones had been thrown into the water. Woo, the shadow whizzed past, rushed into the mind of the Fourth Tribulation martial artist, and entered the mind of the Fourth Tribulation martial artist. This martial artist's mind was protected by a monster soul, but its grade was not high. The monster soul was easily swallowed by the ghost shadow. The result of the demon soul being devoured was death. The Fourth Tribulation martial artist's body trembled, and soon his body fell to the ground. His spatial ring and armor automatically separated. On the other side, the Spectre King had made a contribution as well. The comprehensive strength of the Spectre King could be compared to that of the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation martial artist. The Fourth Tribulation martial artist was only at the initial stage of the Fourth Tribulation martial artist. The Fourth Tribulation martial artist was stunned for a moment. The Spectre King was so fast that he dashed over in an instant and grabbed the Fourth Tribulation martial artist's neck. Crack! A head flew up. 2 Fourth Tribulation martial artists were killed in an instant. The thousands of warriors in the mountain were dumbfounded. Those 2 were their 5th and 6th commanders, Fourth Tribulation martial artists. How could they be killed in an instant? Boom! One of the castles suddenly exploded, and 4 cultivators flew out from within. Their auras were like dragons, and their killing intent surged. Weapons appeared in their hands, and the terrifying killing intent caused their subordinates to tremble with fear. Buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. As soon as the 4 came out, Luli moved almost at the same time. The more than 100 wind warcraft in his separation bead all came out and began to attack. Half of the wind warcraft released skills related to wind, and the other half had their horns lit up. When the four of them soared into the sky, the wind from all directions gathered around them, and a powerful, binding force wrapped around the four of them. Oh no! Seeing the horns of the wind warcraft glowing, the four were taken aback. They all knew about the wind warcraft, and they had heard that a lord used a wind warcraft to pull a chariot. They never expected that Luli had so many wind warcraft. The chi and energy from the beams of light on the wind warcraft were so horrifying that their souls were trembling. Buzzing, the four did not hesitate. They were bound by the wind, and their speed was reduced. They could not run away, even if they wanted to. They had to try their best to defend themselves. The skinny old man, the most powerful one, took out a black shield. The old man on the left took out a yellow shield. The two warriors on the right each released a shield of light. Whoosh, 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 dozens of beams of light shot out and struck the few people one after another. The light shields of two people exploded, and the yellow shield of one person also exploded. Only the black shield of the skinny old man remained intact. Boom, boom, boom. The three warriors at the fourth tribulation were hit by the beams of light. Soon, blood holes appeared on their bodies. The horns of another group of wind warcraft glowed. The three warriors at the fourth tribulation were in despair. Hiss, hiss, countless martial artists sucked in a breath of cold air. They could only watch helplessly as their second commander, third commander, and fourth commander died, leaving behind only their boss who was struggling to hold on. Many had thought that a warrior at the second tribulation would be courting death by provoking the sky-towering army. But now, they realized that this warrior was a super powerful warrior. He had killed several fourth tribulation warriors at once. This shield is a piece of treasure. Luli noticed that the shield was not broken. He had an idea. He told the wind warcraft to stop releasing beams of light and to entangle Qing Tian with skills related to wind. Whoosh, Phantom King and Phantom Shadow rushed over. Phantom Shadow went into Qing Tian's mind, and Phantom King began to attack. Qing Tian put away the shield and took out a saber to fight against Phantom King. Buzzing, however, as soon as Phantom King and Luli began to fight, the wind warcraft released beams of light again. Qing Tian was shocked. Wasn't Luli afraid that Phantom King would be killed as well? Luli knew very well about Phantom King's defense. The wind warcraft could not kill Phantom King. As long as Phantom King was still alive, he could recover from any serious injury. Oh no! Suddenly, Qing Tian realized that the enchanted soul in his soul was about to collapse. He was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Luli was attacking from three sides. Qing Tian could not stand it. He was going to die here today. Bang! After a while, Qing Tian's body fell to the ground. The remaining thousands of warriors were dumbfounded. Their leaders were dead. What else could they do to fight against Luli? Surrender, we surrender. Chapter 23-22. Warriors of the Wandering Bandits did not have much loyalty. They were wandering bandits to begin with. One day, they could be in one legion, and the next, they could be in another legion. Bosses were changing all the time. The stronger ones would be the boss. One day, when the boss was killed, the next boss would be the next. If the boss was not nice to them, or if there was no future to follow the boss, the Wandering Bandits would find another boss. Didn't Sky God come later? He became the new leader after the previous boss was killed. Now that Luli had killed Qing Tian, the Wandering Bandits naturally wanted to follow Luli. Surrender? Luli curled his lips. He was not in the mood to be a boss. He was here to rob. What was the point of being a boss? Leading a bunch of good-for-nothings to commit crimes every day? Therefore, Luli glanced over to them coldly and shouted, "I don't need you to surrender. Hand over all your interspatial rings, or die." Interspatial rings? The group looked at each other, speechless. Soon, they came to their senses. This mysterious man seemed to be robbing them. They were bandits, a relatively powerful group of wandering bandits of the Stormy Mountain. Today, a man had come to rob them? Luli was so powerful that he could kill all the leaders on his own. How could such an important man be robbing them? Weren't important people in need of divine stones and treasures? How could they do something so tasteless? They were small fries and didn't have many treasures or divine stones with them. How could Luli not let them go? Was he a human being? Whoosh, whoosh, Luli put away all the interspatial rings and weapons of Qing Tian and the others. 2 interspatial rings were destroyed. Luli felt it was a shame. After he put them away, he was enraged when he saw nobody was cooperating. The worms of the void flew over and enveloped more than 100 people. Those were all warriors that had passed through 3 tribulations. They could not stop the worms of the void. They rolled around on the ground, and many were gnawed to death. Run! The others were scared out of their wits. Some of them flew up and tried to run away. Luli waved his hand, and the beam of light from the wind warcraft glowed. The more than a dozen people who tried to run away were pierced through and turned into minced meat. Many of the others wanted to run, but they didn't dare to do so. With so many wind demonic beasts, unless everyone fled together, there might be someone who could escape in the chaos. However, if anyone dared to stand out, the dozen or so people were the perfect example. "Sir, this is my space ring. Don't kill me." Finally, someone was afraid. He took out his space ring and threw it on the ground in front of him. The space ring contained his lifetime's worth of treasures, but if he died, the treasures would belong to someone else. Where there's life, there's hope. Let's go back and snatch it. With the first person taking the lead, the rest became much easier as people began taking out their space rings one after another. Of course, there were also people who secretly took out another space ring from their space ring and quickly swallowed it. Those who took out their space rings, stand on the left. Luli waved his hand, and the dozen or so people who had taken out their interspatial rings immediately went to the empty space on the left with joy. Luli turned to the others. They all took out their interspatial rings and threw them on the ground. Wait! When a warrior at the peak of the 3rd tribulation threw out his interspatial ring, Luli said, "Spit out the interspatial ring in your stomach. If you don't, I will dig it out for you." That warrior turned pale. He trembled as he sensed Li's murderous intent. Eventually, he used divine energy to force the interspatial ring out. Then he walked to the empty space on the left, crying. One by one, they threw out their interspatial rings. Many of them resorted to all kinds of tricks, but Luli had activated the trace of Tao, so he could sense everything clearly. He felt the space nearby was under his control. Nobody's little tricks could escape his detection. Of course, some succeeded. Some of them had special interspatial artifacts. But those artifacts did not feel like interspatial artifacts at all. They were more like strands of hair attached to their bodies. Luli could not sense them, either. Luli didn't mind. Those that could escape his detection must be impressive. Those warriors didn't have many treasures, so Luli didn't bother to ask. Soon, everyone's interspatial rings were thrown out. The situation was not in their favor. If they didn't do so, they would die and they would have nothing left. Whoosh, Luli rushed down and collected everyone's interspatial rings. Everyone stared at him. Many of them felt their hearts aching. They had saved up for years, and they had risked their lives time and time again. Now, they had all become Luli's. It was as if they were their own children that had been taken away after they had grown up. Luli was about to leave after he collected all the interspatial rings. But after some thoughts, he decided that since he was here, he might as well make some more money. There seemed to be another legion nearby. He glanced over the warriors, and an idea came to him. He said, "I'm going to loot the Tatian Legion nearby. Do you want to come with me? I will deal with the powerful warriors there, and you can take care of the average warriors. All the loot is yours." The thousands of warriors looked at each other. Luli had just looted them, and now he was going to loot another legion? Or was he going to take them with him? They found it funny. Someone slapped them and said, "Come with me. I will take you to bully others." But after some thoughts, many of them decided to go with Luli. They were poor now. Following Luli would be a great source of shelter. Maybe they could get back what they had lost. They knew the Tatian Legion was similar to them. There were 4 leaders, but they were not as powerful as Heaven's Pillar. They were not a match for Luli. It was not risky to go with Luli. They could get back what they had lost. It was worth the risk. More importantly, if they said no, would they be killed by Luli right away? Many of them knew very well that Luli was taking them with him because he wanted them to be his cover. Then he would come out suddenly and catch the enemies off guard. He would kill several Fourth Tribulation warriors of the Tatian Legion at the lowest cost. In other words, they were cannon fodder, a shield. Usually, cannon fodder would die a miserable death. With Luli there, victory would not be a problem. That being said, nobody could be sure that they would die this time. What? None of you want to? A glint of coldness rose in Luli's eyes. The warriors were scared. They nodded in agreement. Luli waved his hand in satisfaction and said, "Let's go. Let's go. After this, we will go our separate ways. You can go your own way." Whoosh, 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 they flew to the northwest. With so many of them, there was no need to hide. They could not hide anyway. They had to force their way through. Luli put away the worms of the void, the wind warcraft, and the phantom king. He dashed into the army, pretending to be a soldier. The warriors around him felt pressured. They would glance at Luli from time to time, as if he was a demon. "Don't look at me. Treat me like an average warrior. I will gouge out your eyeballs if you keep looking at me." Luli pulled a long face. The warriors would look at him from time to time. Even an idiot could tell that something was wrong. The powerful warriors of the enemy would target him immediately. Chapter 23:23. Thousands of warriors were flying over in such a large manner that it could not be hidden. The smaller legions nearby were trembling in fear, thinking that the Sky-High Legion was going to wipe them out. When they realized that the Sky-High Legion was flying toward the Sky-High Legion, they were relieved. But they were curious as well. Was the Sky-High Legion going to fight the Sky-High Legion? So be it. Why were only warriors of the Third Tribulation and not a leader of the Fourth Tribulation? The Sky-High Legion was not coming. With thousands of warriors courting death, scouts from nearby forces were sent out. They followed the Sky-High Legion secretly to see what was going on. After all, the two forces were big. If they were to fight, the situation at the Stormy Mountain would be affected. Gradually, the news spread out. The more than a dozen forces nearby were alarmed. They all sent scouts to the Sky-High Legion. Luli could sense the presence of the scouts, but he didn't do anything. He knew there was no other way. With so many people, it was impossible to hide their tracks. Unless he cleaned up all the smaller forces nearby, that would take a long time. By then, the situation would be out of control. After flying for 4 hours, the main force finally arrived at the Sky-High Legion. The Sky-High Legion had received the news, and they were all on guard. Li Shi, the team leader of the Sky-High Legion, was confused. They had nothing against the Sky-High Legion. They had always minded their own business. Why would the Sky-High Legion come out tonight? Had they lost their minds? There was another thing that confused Li Shi. According to the scouts, the Sky-High Legion didn't come with them. Not a single warrior of the Fourth Tribulation was here. Were the thousands of warriors here to die? Attack! Luli observed for a while and gave the order to attack. This kind of battle must be fast so that the enemy could not figure out what was going on and they could fish in troubled waters. Only in this way could they end the battle quickly. Otherwise, things could go wrong. Formation of arrows. Charge toward the center. Luli gave orders to the junior commanders in the army. The junior commanders took control of their subordinates and divided them into teams. Like arrows, they dashed toward the mountains. The junior commanders knew very well that Luli needed them to reach the center to get close to the Fourth Tribulation warriors so that he could have a chance to sneak up on them. They also understood that this was the only way to be safer and to have fewer casualties. Attack! On top of a tall mountain, a warrior clad in black armor and wearing an Azura mask issued an order. The enemy had already fought their way to their doorstep. How could they be afraid of battle? Although the Sky-High military's Fourth Tribulation marshalists had not appeared, he was not afraid. If it did not appear, he would kill these thousands of people first. Whoosh, squads of soldiers soared into the sky from the surrounding mountain peaks, surrounding them like a pocket. They also had a few thousand people on their side, but they were divided into many troops and spread out to attack. Boom, boom, boom. Bang, 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 chi, chi, chi. The sky was filled with streams of light. Countless magic treasures danced in the air, and the surrounding void shattered. Countless small mountains were flattened, buildings were destroyed, and corpses fell down. Many spatial rings, armors, and divine weapons automatically detached themselves and danced in the air. No one cared about the destruction of the buildings, nor did they pick up space rings, battle armors, divine weapons, or treasures. The warriors on both sides were in a frenzy. When two enemies met on a narrow path, only the brave would win. The sky-high military had no way out, and the sky-high army had to protect their homeland. Neither side could retreat. The only way out was to fight to the death. Luli had not used any ultimate skill. He had been fighting with his fists. His attacks were not sharp enough to avoid being targeted. Every time, he had to spend a great deal of effort to kill a warrior. This was more fitting for his abilities as a second Tribulation Realm warrior. The sky-high military was brave. The arrow formation made it easier for them to attack. They pressed forward without getting entangled with their enemies. They were not fast, but they were advancing bit by bit. What is going on here? Lishi did not care about the situation here. He threw a glance to a fourth Tribulation warrior who was in charge of intelligence. Recently, he had sent out more than 100 scouts to check the surroundings. Lishi believed that Sky High and the others must be nearby to launch a sneak attack. Therefore, he sent someone to check while he stayed here to take command. If it were just these people, he could kill them all by himself. Nothing. This is strange. A fourth Tribulation old man stroked his beard and glanced around like a mouse. He murmured, "Could it be that Qing Tian and the others are hiding in someone's spatial artifact?" "That is possible." Sky High nodded. They would not believe that Sky High and the others were not here. It all depended on how they showed up. They checked the warriors with psychic power, trying to see if Sky High and the others were disguised as insignificant warriors. Naturally, Luli caught their attention. That being said, all the fourth Tribulation warriors paid him no more attention. He was just a warrior with an unparalleled divine body. They could kill a second Tribulation realm warrior easily. After searching again and again, they still could not find Qing Tian and the others. Li Shi and the others were a little confused because they realized that these several thousand people did not have any spatial rings, weapons, or armor. All of them were fighting barehanded while releasing all sorts of true meanings. If there was no interspatial ring, then there was no interspatial artifact. Where were Sky High and the others hiding? More than 1,000 warriors of the Sky High military had been killed. Sky High and the others should be here by now. Otherwise, if their underlings were all killed, what was the point of a few commanders remaining without an army? The army pressed on. Apart from the junior commanders, nobody had armors or weapons. It was difficult to move forward, and the casualty rate was high. After the time for one incense stick to burn, the army finally reached the mountain in the middle. Lu Li's eyes glowed when he saw Li Shi and the other three standing together. Without any hesitation, Lu Li sent a message to the minor commanders and told them to take the initiative to attack the four warriors at the fourth Tribulation. The minor commanders were bitter, but they had to do it. If they didn't cooperate with Lu Li, they would all die. Li Shi and the others were enraged to see the junior commanders clasping their fists to Lu Li and the others. How dare they attack them at the peak of the third Tribulation? Were they courting death? Buzzing, 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 almost at the same time, Lu Li's interspatial artifact glowed. Wind warcraft came out one after another. Some of them released fundamental principle of wind, and some of their horns lit up. Li Shi and the others were too focused on the junior commanders to notice Lu Li. By the time they realized what was going on, the gale had arrived. Li Shi and the others were not particularly strong, just like Sky High and the others. Under the sneak attack of the Wind Warcraft, the outcome was miserable. After a round of attacks, Li Shi was the only one left alive. The other three were killed in an instant. Poof! Chapter 23-24. Li Shi's ending was the same as Qing Tian's. Luli didn't even send out the Ghost King. He killed Li Shi with the Wind Warcraft alone. At that moment, the battlefield quieted down. The 4 leaders were suddenly killed. This made many people dumbfounded. Their leaders were all dead. What was the point of fighting? There were many warriors around Lu Li, but they retreated at once. They looked at Lu Li as if he were a demon. "Surrender, and we will spare your lives." Lu Li saw that someone was running away. The Wind Warcraft attacked at the same time. Dozens of beams of light were shot out, and the dozens of warriors were turned into minced meat. Lu Li glanced over and said, "If you think you are fast enough, you can try to run." Seeing that the dozens of warriors were reduced to blood and the warriors were glaring at them, nobody dared to run anymore. Someone flew down, knelt on the ground, and shouted, "I surrender! I surrender!" It was just a change of leader. It didn't matter who was the leader. They didn't care. With someone taking the lead, the rest was easy. One by one, they flew down, knelt on the ground, and surrendered. "You can take care of them." Lu Li kept his promise. He waved his hand and flew to where the 4 leaders were killed. He picked up the 4 interspatial rings. At the same time, he flew around in the sky and collected all the interspatial rings. "Give me your interspatial rings, or we will kill you." The warriors of the Sky High Legion were now the masters. Lu Li had fulfilled his promise, which made them want to cry. All of them went down to grab the interspatial rings and weapons. The warriors of the Sky High Legion were dumbfounded. Didn't they surrender for a change of leader? How come they were still robbing? They were going to follow Lu Li from now on. They were on the same side. Lu Li stood in midair with dozens of Wind Warcraft lined up. The warriors on the ground didn't dare to do anything, and they handed over their interspatial rings. Some of them were badly injured by the warriors of the Sky High Legion, and their interspatial rings were taken by force. Lu Li didn't mind them. He began to check his harvest. He used psychic power to check the interspatial rings of Qing, Tian, and Li Shi. The wealth in their interspatial rings must be amazing. "Hiss, hiss," Lu Li gasped after a few glances. The harvest this time was beyond his imagination, especially in Tai Tian's interspatial ring. The godly materials and treasures inside were piled up like a mountain. The godstones were piled up like a small mountain as well. Lu Li remembered that the Sky Force seemed to have just looted a middle-sized city. He was overjoyed. He checked all the interspatial rings carefully and decided to leave. This was because he had at least 1 or 2 billion divine stones in total. There were also some treasures that he couldn't estimate the value of, so his harvest this time was more than enough. He had swept away 2 legions, and the news should have spread by now. It would definitely be difficult to annihilate the other legions, and he might even anger Tian Kanzi. He didn't dare to take the risk and decided to leave. He couldn't just leave like this. Lu Li waited for a while. Seeing that the loot was almost done, Lu Li shouted, "All of you, move towards the Firewolf Legion in the north. Same old rules. You can take whatever you can." The eyes of the people from the Sky High military lit up. Although more than 1,000 people had been injured or killed, they had won easily. If he did the same thing again, it wouldn't be too difficult to take down the Firewolf army. "Let's go." Many warriors flew up. Lu Li waved his hand and flew toward the north with a group of warriors, leaving the warriors of the Tatian Legion behind, who felt like weeping but had no tears. "You go first. This time, I cannot come out in the open. I will follow you secretly." After the time for 1 incense stick to burn, Lu Li sent a message to the junior commanders and then went underground by himself. The junior commanders didn't ask any questions. Lu Li was right. Maybe the Firewolf Legion had already received the news. It would be better for Lu Li to hide in the dark. They flew toward the Firewolf Legion in a formidable array. Lu Li snuck out of the stormy mountain from underground. Now that he had gained enough, he was ready to sneak away. The Sky High military would attract everyone's attention. Nobody would care about him. As for the fate of the Sky High military, Lu Li didn't care. Few of the wandering bandits were good people. Lu Li didn't care about their lives. He used the trace of the Great Path and kept a low profile. In the mountains, there were many scouts going around to check on the Sky High military. Lu Li used the trace of the Great Path to sense them. After flying for half a day, Luli arrived at the city at the foot of the mountain at dawn. He didn't sell the materials in the city. Instead, he teleported away. There were 700 to 800 million divine stones in those interspatial rings, enough for them to teleport far away. He would find a chance to sell the treasures later. Luli teleported again and again. It was a peaceful journey. After several days, he returned to the small city. Phew. Luli was relieved to see Qin Zhan and Gan Lin with psychic power. He put on a big smile. Robbery was the fastest way to make money. If they had to rely on normal means, the three of them wouldn't be able to make that much even if they work hard for 100 years. Luli, Qin Zhan, and Gan Lin sensed it. They came out in delight. Luli said he would be gone for a couple of months. They didn't expect that he would be back so soon. Seeing Luli smile, they were even more excited. Qin Zhan asked, "Did you gain a lot this time?" "Not bad. We should have more than 1 billion divine stones." Luli grinned and walked in with them. Activating the inhibition formation in the room, Luli took out many interspatial rings. One by one, the rings glowed. Weapons and armors appeared, piling up in the hall. "Take your pick." Luli waved his hand and said, "Take whatever you like. If you don't, I will sell them all later." Both of them were disciples of major families of the second heaven. They were experienced and knowledgeable. Even so, they were taken aback by the treasures Luli took out. Many of them were of the same level as the tower of a mortal demon. They were valuable. Qin Zhan and Gan Lin looked at each other and made their choices. They didn't refuse Luli's offer. They didn't want to be a burden to Luli. They chose an armor and a weapon. Luli put away the rest. Then he took out some masks and said, "Choose a mask and change your appearance. Let's hurry up and see if we can go across the land of Ziyang directly." Okay, they chose a mask and changed their appearance. Luli asked, "Do you want to go into the interspatial artifact? Or do you want to teleport with me?" "Let's go together," Qin Zhan grinned and said, "We have recovered a bit. We are bored to death. Let's teleport together." "Sure, let's go together." Luli waved his hand and led them to the teleportation formation. At the teleportation formation, they handed over the divine stones and began to teleport. For months. Chapter 23-25. 4.5 months later, Luli, Qin Zhan, and Gan Lin arrived at the westernmost part of the land of Ziyang. They were in a huge city by the sea called the City of Magic Music. The city was built on a huge cliff. From inside the city, they could hear the sound of the waves hitting the cliff. There seemed to be a special melody to the sound of the waves, which made people feel comfortable and at ease in their souls. This was how the City of Melody came to be. At first, there was no city here. Later on, someone found something special about this place. A powerful family built a city here, and in the end, it became the main city of a territory. This was the westernmost part of the land of Ziyang and the largest port to the chilly winter land. The business here was the most prosperous, and it was one of the largest cities in the west. Luli and the other two had been walking around in the city for many times. They were getting dizzy. This city was at least 100 times larger than the Asmodean city on the Oman Island. The population here could reach more than 100 million. There were all kinds of strange races. Fourth Tribulation warriors were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. The attire here was exotic. The women were dressed so sexy that Qin Zhan could not take his eyes off of them. The three of them had been walking around in the city for 4 days. It was not that they wanted to enjoy the scenery or anything. They were looking for ways to make money. Luli didn't have many divine stones left. He had sold all the treasures he got from the Storm Mountain. This was the result of some unremarkable treasures being sold for a high price. Otherwise, the three of them would not have been able to teleport over. Luli only had a few million divine stones left. It was impossible for him to go to the chilly winterland. There was an ocean between the land of Ziyang and the chilly winterland, the Ocean of Melody. Although this sea was not particularly vast, it was very chaotic. Nobody could control the situation between the two lands. Those with bigger fists were the ones in the right. There were many warriors at the peak of the fourth tribulation there. Many old demons were causing trouble there. If Lu Li and the others flew over, it would take them more than a year. What could happen to the three of them when they were floating on the sea for a year? Nobody could predict. It would be faster if they took the Godspeed boat. But if they took the Godspeed boat, they would die even faster. Such treasures would be targeted as soon as they entered the ocean. If one or two old demons came, they would have nowhere to run. Neither of these two paths would work. Hence, there was only one option left, and that was to take the Divine Sound Territory's super battleship over. This kind of super warship could carry a few thousand people at a time, and its speed was very fast. Although it couldn't compare to the Godspeed boat, its speed could compare to the peak of the fourth tribulation. It would only take 3 months to cross the sea. It didn't matter how long or short it was. The most important thing was safety. The leader of the Divine Sonar Territory was not particularly powerful, but he was from the celestial Dipper Great Thearka's clan. Although this clansman wasn't particularly close, he was still a clansman of the Great Emperor. Because the business here was especially prosperous, this overlord would contribute a lot of resources to the Great Emperor's family every year, so the Great Emperor made an exception and spoke. The people of the Divine Sound Ocean were not allowed to attack the warships of the Divine Sound Territory. Otherwise, he would send people to kill them. Since a great emperor had spoken, who would dare to not give face? In this world, the great emperors were the strongest experts. The words of the great emperors were very powerful. No one dared to disrespect them. Over the years, no one had dared to stop the Divine Sound Territory's warships. They had always been very safe. There was a price to pay for safety. To board the Divine Sound Territory's warships was expensive. One person would have to pay 200 million divine stones. Lu Li and the other two would have to pay 600 million divine stones. Lu Li wouldn't be able to afford so many divine stones unless he sold all the treasures he had. Otherwise, regular treasures and materials wouldn't be enough. Lu Li was regretting at the moment. If he had known this would happen, he would have robbed more forces at the Stormy Mountain. The Divine Sound Territory was very stable. It was the territory of the Great Emperor's family. The law and order were good. There were no roving bandits. Therefore, Lu Li had nowhere to rob. How many divine stones could he earn by robbing some weak warriors? Robbing a major family? That was unless he did it in the city. Many major families here had connections with the families of the lords. On the off chance that the Great Emperor's family was enraged, the three of them would be doomed. Therefore, the three of them wandered around in the city, looking for ways to earn divine stones. Otherwise, they wouldn't know how to cross the sea. They wandered around for a few days and found several ways to earn divine stones, but none of them were ideal. The first was to do manual labor, working for the Divine Sound Territory. Of course, there was no future in this. After a few years of work, they wouldn't be able to earn tens of millions of divine stones. The second was to do dangerous manual labor. This way, they could earn more, but it was risky. That being said, to earn 600 million divine stones would take more than half a year. The third way was to become an assassin. Wherever there was light, there would be darkness. Assassins would always exist. In the Divine Sound Territory, nobody dared to do anything out in the open. There were too many major families here, and all kinds of interests were involved. Once there was a dispute, how could they deal with it? Either they could make use of the forces behind the scenes, or they had to resort to underhanded means. Assassins were a good way to do that. After all, even if the assassin was caught, it would have nothing to do with them. If they could assassinate someone important, they would make a fortune. This way, they could earn divine stones quickly. If they dared to take on a big job, they could earn hundreds of millions or even billions of divine stones by assassinating someone important. Naturally, this path was also very difficult to traverse. It was too dangerous. One misstep and they would lose their lives. Even if they could complete the mission, they would not be able to escape if the target's family learned of their whereabouts and identities. Let's go back first. Lu Li waved his hand, and the three of them went back to a tavern. The three of them stayed in a small tavern, which was low-key and comfortable. Qin Zhan sat on the side and drank in low spirits. Gonlin thought about it and said, "Let's go to the Black Blood Abyss. It's okay to be tired. We will have enough divine stones in half a year." Gonlin was talking about the second plan. This plan was relatively safer. It would take a little more time, but it would not be as dangerous. Luli shook his head and said, "No, the Black Blood Abyss is full of traps. We don't have to look into it. Just think about it, and you can tell that it is a mess. We might not be able to get out if we go in. That is a place shared by 3 families. There are too many dirty things going on. I don't want my fate to be in someone else's hands." When Luli was at the Valley of Ghosts, something happened and he was left with no way out. He didn't want to repeat the same mistake. If something were to happen in there, he would be a beast in a cage at the mercy of others. Qin looked up and asked, "You want to be an assassin?" "Yes." Luli nodded and said, "Assassins here can pick their own targets. I'm going to pick 1 or 2 good ones. As long as we leave as soon as we get what we want and our identities are not exposed, it will be fine. If there is a very good target, we can kill one and leave after the job is done. Once and for all." Well, Chapter 23-26. Being an assassin had always been a high-risk profession, especially in a world where experts were everywhere. Why would anyone hire an assassin who could be easily killed? The amount of god stones spent represented how difficult or risky it would be to kill that person. The higher the price, the greater the difficulty and risk. If Luli wanted to get hundreds of millions of divine stones in one go, the person he had to kill must be powerful, have a powerful background, or have some special factors. Otherwise, the employer would not have wasted so many god stones. Qin and Luli didn't say much. They knew Li's temper. Once he had decided on something, not even 9 bulls could change his mind. However, Li's idea was not wrong. It was easier to go in than to get out of the Black Blood Abyss. If something happened, the 3 of them would have nowhere to run and could only wait for death in there. "All right, let's do it." Qin nodded and added, "Luli, go and see if there are any good quests later. The 2 of us will work with you." Luli nodded. After thinking for an hour, he walked out of the castle and headed toward the southern part of the city. He had found out about an assassin organization. Not only was this organization located in Divine Sonar City, but it also had branches in all the main cities. It was a large organization that spanned across the entire third heaven. Hand of Darkness. This organization was very famous in the third heaven. However, they would not personally send people to assassinate. Instead, they would only issue missions and provide information. The assassins who carried out the missions were all voluntary. It was precisely because the assassins of this organization were not their own people that they were able to exist for such a long time. Otherwise, with so many important figures being assassinated every year, they would have long been destroyed by the joint forces of the various major forces. At the very least, it was impossible for them to openly establish a branch in the main city. At the end of the day, they were just a medium helping the employer to build a bridge between the killer and the employer. Of course, this assassin organization didn't dare to accept some missions, such as assassinating a great emperor's descendant. If they dared to accept such missions, they wouldn't be long from destruction. Luli walked to the south side of the city and found a castle. This castle didn't have a plaque, but there was a black skeletal hand carved on the door. The entire street looked gloomy because of this castle. Luli put on his cloak and walked in, even though he felt like he was hiding something. After he walked in, he found that there was no one inside. There were only 2 corridors with different markings on them. A dagger was engraved on the left corridor, while a godstone was engraved on the right corridor. Luli understood at a glance. He walked into the corridor of the dagger and found 3 side halls at the end of the path. There were also markings on the side hall. This time, there were words written on it. The words on the left were basic, the middle was intermediate, and the furthest right was super. This was probably the division of quests. Luli thought about it and knocked on the intermediate door. He pushed the door open and walked in. There was nothing inside, only a table, and behind it sat a skinny old man in a black robe. The old man raised his head and looked at Luli. There was no emotion in his eyes as he calmly asked, "You want to take an intermediate quest?" Luli nodded and said, I want to take a mission with a reward of 600 million divine stones. 600 million? This time, the old man's expression changed. He raised his eyebrows and asked, Are you sure? The old man didn't say it clearly, but his meaning was clear. He was asking if Luli had the ability. Luli smiled and said, No one would joke around with their own life. I wouldn't be so bored as to come here to play. The old man nodded, but still said, Prove it to me. The old man released a ray of Xian energy to activate the inhibition formation in the hall. Luli took out his flying sword. The sword glowed, and a surge of energy spread out. Luli asked, Is it enough? No. The old man shook his head. Luli had no choice but to let out Phantom and asked again, Is it enough? Still not enough. If you want to take a mission with a reward of tens of millions of divine stones, then it is enough. The old man shook his head again. Luli had to let out Spectre King. The old man's eyes glowed as he said, It is enough now. After Luli put away Spectre King and Phantom, the old man took out a file and flipped through it. After a while, he said, There are 2 quests with a reward of 600 million to 1 billion divine stones nearby. Take a look. Luli took over the 2 files. It was evident that the files had been processed. Some information was not displayed. Luli could only see some simple information. The first was to assassinate a family patriarch of a nearby territory, a warrior at the later stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm. The reward was 1 billion divine stones. The second was to wipe out a force with 4 warriors at the middle stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm, 5 at the initial stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm, and thousands of warriors. The reward was 800 million divine stones. Divine stones are not easy to earn. Luli curled his lips. Divine stones were hard to earn. Kill a warrior at the later stage of the 4th Tribulation Realm? A family patriarch of a major family? Luli would not only have to deal with the family patriarch, but also the patriarchs of the family. Therefore, Luli didn't consider the first task at all. Even though it was just one person, it was much more difficult than wiping out a force. What was more, he had to find the right opportunity. Maybe he would have to wait for a year or 2. He did not have the time to waste. Then he had to consider the second task. Luli read the introduction of the second task carefully. He didn't miss any information. Then he asked, Is there any more information about the second task? I will give it to you after you accept the task. This task requires a deposit of 1 million divine stones. The old man said, If you can't complete the task in a year, the deposit will be gone. 1 million divine stones. Luli understood. He thought for a while and took out 1 million divine stones from his interspatial ring. He handed it over and said, I will take this task. The old man took over the divine stones and scanned the file. The hidden information was revealed. He handed over another jade talisman and said, There is an intelligence connection for this task. If you go to the Tianyan city near the task, you could go to the tea house of books with this jade talisman. You will be able to get the latest information about the target. After you complete the task, you can come to me to claim the reward. The reward will be given according to the degree of completion. If you cannot kill the leader, you won't get any divine stones. We have professionals who will verify it right away. No problem. Luli was about to leave when the old man shook his head and said, Read the file first. You cannot take it with you. Oh. Luli stopped and began to read carefully. He memorized all the information and then returned the case file to her. He walked out and strolled around the city. After confirming that no one was following him, he returned to the inn. How'd it go? Qin Zhan and Gan Lin came up to him. Luli said with a bitter smile, I took a task, but it is difficult. I have to think about it and see how I can complete it. Luli said it casually, as if it wasn't difficult at all. However, only he himself knew. The chance of success was only 50%, which meant that there was a 50% chance that he would die there. Chapter 23-27. The target was not the Melody territory, but the nearby water ant territory. That force was not well known. Many people here didn't even know about it. It was called the Palace of Black Moon. The force was not based in the city, but in a mountain. The force was low-key and the warriors rarely came out. But this force made many smaller forces nearby fearful. Even the governor of a nearby city didn't dare to provoke the force. The master of the Palace of Black Moon was a woman, a twisted witch. She was proficient in all kinds of evil skills and had a deep understanding of sacred glyphs. She was fond of male pets, and her methods were vicious. Those that fell into her hands would suffer miserably. The Palace of Black Moon had 3 warriors at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation and 5 at the initial stage. 6 of them were females, some young and some old. Their personalities were twisted and twisted. Some time ago, the old witch captured a young master and tortured him to death. The young master's family didn't dare to seek revenge. They had to sell their family's assets and come to the Hand of Darkness to issue missions. The old witch was not particularly powerful, but her methods were vicious and she was proficient in evil skills. Powerful warriors could kill her in one move. That being said, the old witch had been living a comfortable life. Her surname was Yu, and the Yu family was a powerful force here. The old witch's family didn't like her, or else she wouldn't have created the Palace of Black Moon. Even though the Yu family didn't like her, she was still a member of the Yu family. If she was killed, the Yu family would look into it. Therefore, the major families and powerful warriors nearby didn't dare to touch her even though they didn't like her. The information was in the intelligence. Luli said he had a 50-50 chance of winning because he was worried about the old witch's evil skills. He wasn't afraid of the Palace of Black Moon's sacred glyphs. Several warriors at the initial stage of the Fourth Tribulation could pose no threat to him. As for the 3 at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation, he was confident that he could deal with them. What was more, the Palace of Black Moon was not far away from the base camp of the Yu family. If Luli killed everyone and the Yu family found out, he wouldn't be able to make it back to the mystical Sonar City. Luli had to wipe out the Palace of Black Moon and then go back to the mystical Sonar City at once. He would claim the reward and leave on a super battleship. Gonlin, Luli thought about it and said, "Go and find out when the super battleships of the realm of Mystic will depart and how long it will be." Gonlin went out to gather information as soon as Luli gave the order. Luli said to Qin Zhan, "Go and find out about the Yu family. Focus on the relationship between the Yu family and the Shrine of Melody. If they are on good terms with the Shrine of Melody, then we cannot touch them. Otherwise, we will die even if we get on the battleship." All right. Qin Zhan left as well. Luli took out the map and started to study it. He carefully observed the situation around the Palace of Black Moon and started to plan his escape route. Half a day later, Gonlin returned and reported on the situation of the super battleships. These battleships would go out once a month, and each time, there would be 3 of them. Regardless of whether or not there were enough customers, it was basically fixed, and they would go out once a month. 3 ships had set off 6 days ago, and the next batch would have to wait for another 24 days. 24 days? Luli nodded. He had enough time. It would only take him 3 days to teleport over and 6 days to go back and forth. If he couldn't kill them in one night, then the mission would be considered a failure. Therefore, Luli was not in a hurry, nor could he be. He had to make good use of the time. When a mission was completed and he came back, the battleships would be ready to depart as soon as the mission was completed. Another half a day later, Qin Zhan came back as well. He had spent more than 100,000 divine stones to find out some accurate information. The Yu family and the Melody region were not on good terms. There was even some resentment between them. It was said that decades ago, there was a dispute between the young generation and someone died. Later, the emperor sent someone to mediate because the Yu family was one of the staunch supporters of the emperor. Even though the 2 sides were on the same side, they were not on friendly terms. Luli was relieved. At the very least, when the battleships left, even if the Yu family could find out who he was, the Melody region wouldn't let the battleships go back. Let's do it. Luli didn't hesitate. He decided to do it right away. He said to Qin Zhan and Gonlin, "You guys stay here. If I don't come back in a month, then it means I am dead. You guys can go on your own." Qin Zhan and Gonlin looked at each other, not knowing what to say. Qin Zhan said, "We can't help much, but we can at least support you from the outside. That's pointless. Luli shook his head and said, I don't need support. We are brothers, and I will not beat around the bush. You will not be of any help to me if you go now. You will distract me. So, just stay here and don't worry. I will try not to be impulsive. If something goes wrong, I would rather not finish the mission and stay alive. Worst comes to worst, we will work here for a few years. Luli patted their shoulders and said, Why are you pulling such long faces? It's not that you are weak. Many people have been cultivating for tens of thousands of years, and they still can't reach your realm. It's just that my opponents are of a higher level. What is there to be upset about? Compared to many people, you are strong enough. Furthermore, my own battle power is actually not that strong. I've only taken a few beasts and rely on their battle power. All right. The two forced a smile, but said nothing more. It was pointless for them to go. It was better to stay here. They wouldn't distract Luli, and he would have a better chance of survival. Luli didn't leave in a hurry after he convinced the two. He stayed here. He planned to gather some information for the next few days. The more information he had, the safer he would be. Luli took action after he wandered around in the city for 10 days. He teleported all the way to the Heaven Fortune City near the Black Moon Palace. He went to the bookstore and got the latest information about the Black Moon Palace. Recently, the Black Moon Palace did something evil again. They kidnapped a young master of a small family, and the young master died on the 5th day. He was nailed to the cliff behind the Black Moon Palace. This young master was famous nearby. He was an elegant young master with a good character. He was humble and kind. He was respected and liked by many. Maybe it was because this young master was so famous that he suddenly disappeared one day. His family immediately sent people to search for him, but to no avail. 5 days later, he was found nailed to the cliff behind the Black Moon Palace. Also, this young master was naked. There were whip marks and time marks on his body. Clearly, he had been tortured. It was too horrible to look at. This incident caused public anger. Many of the nearby small clans were furious, but no one dared to act recklessly. The Black Moon Palace was the overlord nearby. Nobody could afford to offend them. That family didn't even dare to collect the body of their young master. At the moment, the body was still nailed to the cliff, the old which was in the Black Moon Palace recently. Luli didn't stay idle. He didn't act rashly either. Instead, he wandered around nearby and investigated secretly. He passed by the cliff behind and saw a man hanging on the cliff. Many parts of the man's body were badly scratched by the goshawk. She really is the old witch. Vicious. Chapter 23-28. It was a dark night. There was no moonlight and the wind was strong. It was a murderous night. Luli took action tonight. Coming out from the Tianyan city, Luli snuck into the vicinity of the Palace of Black Moon. There is only one building in the Palace of Black Moon, a huge castle. There are no sentries on the mountain. There were only several teams of warriors patrolling outside the castle. There are divine glyphs. Luli could sense many divine glyphs as he snuck into the mountain. That old witch of the Palace of Black Moon must have a profound knowledge of divine glyphs. If it were not for the trace of Tao, Luli would not have noticed many divine glyphs. Blood Fairy, go and check. Lead the way. Luli's hand glowed as Blood Fairy came out. Soon, he received many messages. Blood Fairy led Luli forward without touching any divine glyphs. An hour later, Luli was 1,000 miles away from the Palace of Black Moon. He sensed there were teams of warriors patrolling. Luli did not rush over. He told Blood Fairy to set up some nearby while he built some one-way teleportation formations. In case something went wrong, he could dash into the teleportation formation and teleport himself to a place millions of miles away. 4 teleportation formations were built, and Blood Fairy built some fields of divine glyphs. Making sure everything was ready, Luli flew over quietly. He was 30 miles away from the castle when he made some noise. Who is it? A team of warriors was alarmed. They checked with psychic power. Luli was in a panic. He ran down the mountain at once. Thief, that team of warriors could tell that Luli was only at the second tribulation realm. They thought Lu Li was a thief sneaking into the palace of Black Moon. That team of warriors did not sound the alarm. They all went after Lu Li, ready to capture him. He was courting death by coming to the palace of Black Moon. The 6 of them dashed away. Lu Li ran like a rabbit in fear. He did not move too fast. He managed to keep up with the others. He ran down the mountain at once. He slowed down so that the others could catch up with him. The 6 of them were warriors that had passed through 3 trials. They followed him closely. They were enraged that Lu Li dared to sneak into the palace of Black Moon. They wanted to take Lu Li back and interrogate him. After more than 3,000 miles, Lu Li felt that the palace of Black Moon could no longer sense him. He suddenly stopped. He turned around and waited for the 6 people to charge at him. The fear on his face disappeared and was replaced with a calm expression. He looked at the 6 people as if they were ants. The 6 of them were shocked, but then they flew over angrily. Lu Li's stare had enraged them. They didn't want to interrogate Lu Li anymore. They wanted to kill Lu Li directly. Whoosh, Lu Li took the initiative to attack. He sped up and reached the 6 warriors in an instant. In the blink of an eye, all 6 of them were sent flying, and all of them were severely injured. Whoosh, Lu Li dashed away and pulled the 6 of them into the separated heaven bead. He didn't interrogate them directly. Instead, he sealed their divine power and took their spatial rings. Finally, he summoned countless void worms. The 6 of them screamed as they were tortured to death. Lu Li stood on the side without saying a word. To the 6 of them, he looked like a demon. Tell me about the Black Moon Palace. After a while, Lu Li stopped the void worms and walked to the first warrior. That warrior glared at Lu Li with hatred, but said nothing. Bang! Lu Li stomped on the warrior, breaking all his ribs. Then, he kicked the warrior away. The void worms went on biting him. That warrior was in so much pain that he wished he was dead again. It's your turn. Lu Li walked to the second warrior and said coldly. That warrior was hesitating. Lu Li lifted his foot and stomped on the warrior's head. That warrior said in terror, I will talk, I will. Bang! Lu Li did not stop. The warrior's head was crushed, and he died immediately. Lu Li said coldly, I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. It is too late. He walked over slowly to the third warrior. This time, he said nothing and only stared at the warrior. That warrior's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He made up his mind and said, I will talk. Lord, I will tell you whatever you want to know. I just hope that you can spare my life. You're all small fries. My goal is to kill your master. Lu Li waved his hand and said, It doesn't matter to me whether I kill you or not. It is up to you whether you can live or not. We'll talk, we will. The rest of the warriors didn't hesitate anymore. They all crawled up and looked at Lu Li in fear. Good. Lu Li nodded with satisfaction and then began to ask more questions. The situation inside the Black Moon Palace was complicated. The more he knew, the more likely he would be to succeed. Buzzing, an hour later, Lu Li came out. He had learned a lot of information, but he didn't relax. Instead, he was solemn. The warriors didn't know much about the old witch of the Black Moon Palace. All they knew was that she was powerful and knew many evil skills. Lu Li learned the general situation of the other warriors of the Black Moon Palace from the warriors. More importantly, he learned that the divine runes in the Black Moon Palace were horrifying. The entire Black Moon Palace was covered with countless divine runes. The castle itself was a weapon of mass destruction. Blood Fairy could crack the divine runes. However, as soon as she moved, the old witch would know. Before Blood Fairy could crack the divine runes, the old witch would come out. It was said that the castle could fly away as a whole. If the old witch could not defeat the divine runes, Lu Li would have to rush into the castle and fight. By then, the divine runes would be of great use to restrict Lu Li's movements. Lure her out and kill her. I must be fast. I cannot let her get into the castle. Lu Li made up his mind. He snuck into the mountain again and said to Blood Fairy, Blood Fairy, can you build a divine rune? I will lure them out, and you can trap them for a while with the rune. Sure, but this divine inscription dojo can't be too big, Blood Fairy replied. Strong people can break it open. Never mind then, if the divine rune plaza was too small, Not even Luli himself would be safe. Besides, the old witch and the others were strong. What if the Divine Rune Plaza was destroyed in one move? Luli thought about it and said, later, when the fight starts, sneak into the castle and find a way to control the divine runes. The first thing to do after that is to seal off the castle. Do not let anyone in. If you cannot control the divine runes, then destroy the divine runes inside and destroy all the divine runes. If something goes wrong, go hide nearby and I will come for you later. Okay. Blood Fairy would carry out Luli's orders to the fullest. She snuck into the ground. Luli flew up as well. His energy spread out as he yelled, "You old witch, come out. I will cut off your head to enforce justice." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Luli's words were like poking a hornet's nest. Many warriors came out from the two gates of the castle. Many powerful psychic powers locked onto Luli. Space seemed to be frozen at this moment. Chapter 23-29. The Palace of Black Moon was the overlord in this area. Because of the relationship between their master and the Yu family, no other forces dared to provoke them. Therefore, the warriors of the Palace of Black Moon were proud. Usually, they were the ones bullying others. Who dared to bully them? Today, however, someone had come to their door, uttered arrogant words, and called their master an old witch. This made the warriors of the Palace of Black Moon furious and scared. They were afraid that they would suffer because of their master's wrath. Therefore, Luli's words had attracted at least 3,000 warriors, including 4 Fourth Tribulation warriors. The other Fourth Tribulation warriors also used psychic power to check. When they realized that the one who came to provoke was a Second Tribulation warrior, they were stunned. This man must be out of his mind. He must be tired of living. Buzzing, Luli paid no attention to them. The distant heaven bead kept glowing. He let out all the worms of the void, hundreds of billions of them. The worms of the void covered up the sky, whooshing and attacking at once. The worms of the void were fast, which caught people's attention. Many took out their weapons and began to attack. They were ready to destroy the low-level worms and then kill Luli. The worms are intangible. Countless attacks flew over, but they passed through the void worm and didn't cause any substantial damage to it. By the time they realized what was going on, many worms had entered their bodies. Of course, some had special skills that could shake up space and knock away the worms of the void. Some could kill the worms of the void. Unfortunately, there were too many of them. They were like swarms of bees everywhere they could find. All soon, someone cried out miserably. Most of the warriors could suppress the worms of the void, but they were occupied. They had no chance to help Luli. Whoosh! Luli flew to the distance. The 4 Fourth Tribulation warriors came over with a glint of coldness in their eyes. The Fourth Tribulation warriors were so fast that the worms of the void could not catch up with them. Naturally, they could not hurt them. 3 of the 4 were at the initial stage of the Fourth Tribulation and 1 at the middle stage. The one at the middle stage was a lady. Old as she was still pretty. She stared at Luli with excitement in her eyes. She stuck her tongue out and said with a smile, "Little brother, don't run away. Let me take care of you." Seeing the glint in the eyes of the middle-aged woman, Luli felt like throwing up. He flew for 1,000 miles, but because he deliberately slowed down, he was soon caught up. The middle-aged lady soon moved like a ghost. She chased after Luli with strange footwork. She reached out her hand and gently grabbed at Luli. This was a warrior at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation. Luli could not afford to be careless. The separation bead glowed. First, the weapon came out. Then, the bead glowed again. Phantom King and Ghost came out at the same time. Luli took out a weapon, but the old lady did not care. Therefore, when the heaven separation bead glowed again, she did not let her guard down. It was not until the Phantom King and Ghost Shadow came out that she was startled. Roar! The Spectre Monarch roared into the sky, and a fierce aura spread in all directions, causing the Third Tribulation martial artist in the distance to shiver all over. The middle-aged woman was also trembling in fear. The Phantom King's aura was simply too violent and violent. Buzzing, as soon as the ghost shadow came out, he turned into a gust of chilly wind and entered the middle-aged woman's body. Then the specter monarch dashed forward and reached at the middle-aged woman with his sharp claws. Bang! The demonic soul in the middle-aged woman's soul was not strong. Under the joint efforts of the ghost shadow and the specter monarch, she was killed in an instant. Her body was torn in half, and her interspatial ring fell off automatically. Run! The three warriors at the initial stage of the fourth tribulation were frightened. They knew very well how powerful the middle-aged woman was. If she could be killed in an instant, how could the three of them stand a chance? Woo-woo, Ghost Shadow and the Spectre Monarch flew out from the body, and each went after one warrior. The three of them were fast, but they were not as fast as the Spectre Monarch and the Spectre Monarch. Soon, the two warriors were caught up with. The outcome was sealed. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The moment the middle-aged woman was killed, hundreds of warriors flew out from the castle. 5 of them were warriors at the fourth tribulation. Luli checked with psychic power and was relieved. The old witch had come out. What Luli needed was for the old witch to come out and hunt him down so that he could find a way to kill her. When the old witch was dead, the others would be easy to deal with. Bang! The Spectre Monarch tore apart a warrior at the fourth tribulation. Soon, the Spectre Monarch made his move as well. The soul of a warrior at the fourth tribulation collapsed, and his body fell to the ground. Come back. Luli controlled the Spectre Monarch and the Spectre Monarch to come back. The Old Witch came with all the warriors at the fourth tribulation. Even though she was called the Old Witch, she didn't look good at all. Instead, she was more like a beautiful lady. She stared at Luli with coldness and surprise in her eyes. Dozens of miles away from Luli, she stopped and asked, "Who are you? Why are you targeting me?" Luli wouldn't do anything if the enemies didn't do anything. The Old Witch was calm and not in a hurry. Luli was afraid that if he made a move now, the Old Witch would run away in fear. "You don't have the right to know who I am." Luli provoked the Old Witch on purpose. "Old Witch, you have done many evil things and are heartless. I heard about you when I was passing by, so I decided to kill you. Are you going to kill yourself, or do I have to do it? If I do it, I don't think I will leave you with a whole body." "You talk big." The Old Witch was angry, but she suppressed it and said coldly, "I am from the Yu family. Aren't you afraid that the Yu family will be angry if you kill me?" "Ha." Luli sneered and said, "I have great respect for the Yu family, but I don't think the Yu family will recognize a wicked witch like you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have founded the Palace of Black Moon. If the Yu family wants to kill me because of you, then I will be disappointed. I will be laughed at by the entire Western region." "Cut the crap." Luli waved his saber and said, "Old Witch, I will give you one last chance. Hang your neck and kill yourself. I will leave you with a whole body. If I do it, I will turn you into minced meat." Courting death. The Old Witch was enraged. She shouted, "All of you do it. Tear this bastard apart." A black furnace appeared in the Old Witch's hand. She suddenly raised it up into the air. The furnace grew bigger in the air, and the lid was opened. Dark red powder appeared all over the sky and was blown towards Luli. Poisonous fog. Luli's expression changed. He could see many strange poisonous insects in the poisonous fog. He didn't dare to touch them. He put away the Spectre King's ghostly shadow and took out the Godspeed boat. His body flashed and entered it, flying into the distance. "You want to run? Go." The Old Witch was furious. She chased after him with several warriors of the fourth tribulation. Luli didn't let the God boat go at its top speed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to catch up. He controlled the God boat at a speed similar to the Old Witch's. He was faster than the others. He did it on purpose. He wanted to lure the Old Witch and the others away. He couldn't let them enter the castle. He controlled the speed so that the Old Witch would be alone. When he was about to kill the Old Witch, the others wouldn't be able to help. Chapter 23:30. It was midnight at the Tianyan city, but there were still many people in some places, especially the taverns and theaters. Whoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air. alerting countless people in the city. Many people used psychic power to check, and the city became lively. They found a very familiar person, the old witch. The heavenly fortune city was near the Black Moon Palace, and the old witch would sometimes pass through the vicinity when she went out. Many people would discover her, and there was even one time when the old witch came to the city and killed someone in public. Everyone naturally had a deep impression of her. Old witch, do you want to die? How dare you shout like this? Yeah, if you want to die, don't drag us down. Call her master of the Palace of Black Moon. The master of the Palace of Black Moon is here in person. Who is she hunting? What is that small battleship? It is so fast. Let's go and see. This is big news. Someone, go and check it out. Heavenly Fate City immediately became lively. Countless scouts were dispatched. The old witch of the Black Moon Palace held the hearts of countless people. Countless people in the city also began to spread the news, passing on the situation here to the nearby large clans. Luli did this on purpose. He flew over the Tianyun city for several purposes. First, he wanted to lure out some scouts and some powerful warriors with ulterior motives. This would be of some help to him later in the battle and distract the old witch. Second, he wanted to show the people of the Dark Hand that he was on the move. Most importantly, he wanted to use other people's mouths to shut up the Yu family. In this way, when he killed the old witch, the Yu family might not dare to hunt him down. Sometimes, public opinion was important. As a super family, the Yu family must care about their reputation. When they passed by the Sky Fortune City, Luli began to roar, using the dragon's roar divine skill so that the entire Sky Fortune City could hear him. Old witch, you come from the prestigious Yu family, but you are devoid of conscience and have committed many evil deeds. You constantly abduct young and handsome men, doing dirty and despicable things. Have you ever thought that you will bring shame to the Yu family? The Yu clan is a famous clan in the western region with an illustrious reputation. What you've done is ruining the Yu clan's tens of thousands of years of prestige. Old witch, do you know how many people around here hate you to the bone? Do you know how many people want to cut you into pieces? Do you know that all the evil you've done will be punished by the heavens? Old witch, today I will execute justice on behalf of the heavens and kill you to avenge the deaths of those innocent young men. Even if the Yu clan hunts me down after this matter and cuts me into 1,000 pieces, I will still have a clear conscience. Luli shouted again and again. His voice shook heaven and earth, echoing in an area with a radius of hundreds of miles. The city was in an uproar. Countless people who were sleeping or cultivating were alarmed, and countless people rose into the air. The old witch was indeed notorious, and countless people hated her to the bone. However, these things could only be said in secret. Who dared to say it out loud? Now, Luli had publicized the evil deeds of the old witch to the public and scolded her in front of the entire city. How could this not cause a stir in the city? The old witch was so angry that she almost went crazy. She increased her speed and chased after the god speedboat. Luli controlled the god speedboat and sped up. Soon, the man and the boat flew into the distance. It's about time. Luli felt that it was about time to leave the Tianyun city for hundreds of thousands of miles. It was not that he couldn't fly forward, but he was afraid that the old witch would wake up from her anger. When a person lost his mind, it was the best time to kill him. The rest of the fourth tribulation warriors of the Black Moon Palace were left behind. It would probably take them at least the time for half an incense stick to burn to get here. In a battle between powerful warriors, one breath could determine life and death. If Luli couldn't kill the old witch in the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, then he wouldn't be able to kill this person. He had better run as far as he could. Luli suddenly controlled the Godspeed boat to stop. Not only did he stop, but he also started to fly backwards. The old witch who was chasing after him immediately revealed a ghastly killing intent in her eyes. She waved her hand, and the stove flew up again. At the same time, she took out a small seal and smashed it towards the Godspeed boat. The old witch's intention was clear. She wanted to use the seal to smash the Godspeed boat and then let the pink poisonous fog envelop Luli. She believed that as long as Lu Li was enveloped by the pink, poisonous fog, his life would be in her hands. She was overthinking. Lu Li had already turned the Godspeed boat around. It was Blood Fairy who was controlling the Godspeed boat. Later on, she told Lu Li how to control the patterns inside. Now, Lu Li could control the Godspeed boat as if it was his own arm. The Godspeed boat moved in an arc and sped up as well. It glided past the old witch's left side. When it passed by the old witch, Lu Li let out Phantom. Buzzing like a gust of wind, Phantom reached the old witch and entered her body in an instant. But the old witch was not afraid. Her expressions didn't change. Buzzing, 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 as Lu Li flew over, many wind warcraft came out. At once, a gale sprang up. Lu Li controlled the Godspeed boat to circle around the old witch. One wind warcraft after another was released. All of them used skills related to wind. The power of the wind was gathered from all directions, and all of it wrapped around the old witch, greatly reducing her speed. For the first time, she was worried because she knew the wind warcraft. Attack, Lu Li ordered. Some of the wind warcraft began to shoot out beams of light. Lu Li knew that the Phantom King would not be able to kill the old witch. He had to rely on a large number of wind warcraft. If the old witch was injured, then it would not be difficult to kill her. Buzzing, the old witch's ring glowed as she took out a black ball. Then, she dashed into the ball. Dozens of beams of light hit the ball, but the ball was so solid that it could not be penetrated. This old witch has so many treasures. Lu Li was troubled. If dozens of beams of light could not crack the ball, then no amount of attacks would help. Where did the old witch get so many treasures? Did the Yu family give them to her? I will have to take the risk. Lu Li made up his mind. Reinforcements would arrive soon. He must kill the old witch as soon as possible, or he would fail in this mission. Whoosh! He told the wind demon beast to stop controlling it, and controlled the Godspeed boat to fly over. After arriving near the sphere, he released the Ghost King. Roar, roar! The Phantom King bellowed and scratched at the ball. However, the ball glowed. The Phantom King's horrifying strength could not tear it apart. Buzzing, Lu Li threw caution to the wind. He dashed out and took out a piece of black iron plate. He poured divine energy into it and smashed at the ball. Boom! This time, the ball could not stand it anymore. It fell apart, and the old witch came out. Her eyes were filled with shock. She stared at Lu Li and said, "Holy weapon shard. You have a holy weapon shard." Roar, roar! The Phantom King rushed over to attack the old witch. The old witch was at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation, and she had been famous for a long time. Naturally, she was fast. She paid no attention to the Phantom King. A blue arrowhead appeared in her hand. With a shrill sound, she stabbed at Lu Li's head. Holy weapon fragment. Lu Li sensed her energy and complained to himself. The old witch had too many treasures, including pieces of Emperor weapon. He reacted quickly. He sent out his flying sword and stabbed at the old witch. At the same time, he took out his shield, which was transformed from the cauldron of 1,000 transformations. Bang! Chapter 23:31. The Phantom King's claws viciously clawed at the old witch's left shoulder, shattering it. At the same time, the flying sword pierced through the old witch's chest and came out from her back. Die! The old witch didn't care at all. She continued to stab at Lu Li. At the same time, some evil energy came out from her and enveloped Lu Li. The old witch was not a good-for-nothing who was under the protection of her family. She founded the Palace of Black Moon all by herself and had been doing evil for years. She survived, not only because of the Yu family, but also because of her own abilities. She knew very well that she could kill the Phantom Master, but she would have to pay a heavy price. There were wind warcraft all around. In the end, she would lose her life. Therefore, she chose to kill the leader first. When Lu Li died, the beasts would become ownerless. Not all of them would die, but at least they would not attack her anymore. So be it. Let's see who dies first. Lu Li had made up his mind. He was not as fast as the old witch. He could not run away. He had to fight with his life. The old witch had a piece of Emperor weapon, but he had a piece of holy weapon. Granted, the old witch's realm was higher, and he might not be able to unleash the full power of the holy weapon, but there was no time to think. Either he or the old witch would die. Phantom, full force. Luli yelled in his soul and controlled Phantom to attack with full force. The ghost bead was under Luli's control now. It was easy to control the ghost bead. Blood Fairy had told him the trick. In the distance, several warriors of the fourth tribulation of the Palace of Black Moon and scouts from other forces had caught up. They could feel the might of the holy weapon and the emperor weapon from the distance. They could sense that the space over there was trembling violently. What was more, they could sense the might of the Wind Warcraft and the Phantom Master. There were so many Wind Warcraft. Boom! A shock wave came from the distance. The space over there was trembling. The horrifying blast swept across, suffocating everyone. Not good. One of the four tribulation experts shouted in fear. Palace Master has been killed. They were so close that they could use psychic power to see what was going on. They could faintly see Li and their master bumped into each other. Two powerful relic weapons clashed against each other. Then, the glow in their master's hand died out. Li smashed a ray of light on their master's head. Boom! The Holy Artifact Fragment and the Emperor Artifact Fragment collided. The Holy Artifact Fragment obtained a complete victory. The old witch's arrowhead was smashed into pieces, and her head was also smashed. That being said, Li was not feeling well, either. His chest was covered in blood. His muscles, bones, and internal organs were crushed by the horrifying energy. His body bounced back and blood spurted out of his mouth. However, when he saw the old witch's corpse, he revealed a delighted smile. Unfortunately, his face was covered in blood, and his smile looked very ferocious no matter how one looked at it. He's injured, kill him. The four tribulation warriors were filled with killing intent. They didn't run away. Instead, they dashed toward Li. It was not that they respected the old witch. It was just that if they didn't kill Li, the Yu family would kill them later. Aha! Li flew over and put away the old witch's interspatial ring. Unfortunately, the Emperor Artifact Fragment was broken by him. It was not of much use now. He couldn't sell it for many divine stones. The old witch is dead. The scouts nearby were dumbfounded by what they saw. Then, they were overjoyed. After all, the death of the old witch had nothing to do with them. This was a piece of good news. Let's go back and send a message. Countless scouts returned to the city and spread this shocking news. It was estimated that in less than a day, everyone in the vicinity would receive this news. This was an exciting piece of good news. Whoosh, the 5 fourth tribulation warriors dashed over. Li was not afraid at all, seeing that they didn't run away. Instead, he was overjoyed. The task had a completion rate. If he could not kill them all, he would not get all the rewards. Walking right into the trap. If they ran away, it would be more difficult for Li to hunt them down. On the other hand, coming at them would be no different from courting death. Li didn't take action in a hurry. He swayed and flew down to take out some healing pellets to tend to his wounds. He seemed to be dying. Soon, the 5 warriors came over. When they were close, Li took out the godly boat and flew away in a blur. The countless wind demonic beasts began to move, and wild gales filled the sky, slowing everyone down. Next, countless streams of light appeared. Whoosh, 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 boom, boom, boom. The 5 began to attack desperately. But how could they fight against more than 100 Wind Warcraft? Soon, 2 warriors at the initial stage of the fourth tribulation were killed. They were smashed into pieces of flesh and broken limbs. Run! The rest were scared. They might die if they were hunted down by the Yu family, but they would die if they didn't leave now. Even though Li seemed to be badly injured, his boat was fast. There was no way they could catch up with him. You want to run? Too late. Li took control of the godly boat and came back. He looked on indifferently. The rest of the warriors were tough, and they were capable. One of them killed 2 Wind Warcraft and managed to escape. Whoosh! Li flew the godly boat over to where that warrior was. He let out Ghost Shadow and Phantom King. This warrior was slower than Phantom King. With the help of Ghost Shadow, he was no match for Ghost Shadow. Boom! Someone had a yellow spear in his hand. The spear was so powerful that it killed 3 Wind Warcraft in a row. Unfortunately, he was badly injured. Soon, he was shredded into pieces by the Wind Warcraft. Hiss, some of the nearby scouts recognized the Wind Demon Beast and spread the news. All the scouts and martial artists sucked in a breath of cold air. They only heard that a lord caught many Wind Warcraft to pull his chariot, which was quite a sight. But they didn't expect that the more than 100 Wind Warcraft could be so powerful. After the time for more than a dozen breaths, everyone was torn to pieces. Luli dashed out and put away the interspatial rings. The powerful warriors of the Palace of Black Moon must have a lot of divine stones and treasures. He could sell them for hundreds of millions of divine stones. Luli put away the Wind Warcraft and used psychic power to check on the scouts and warriors nearby. Those warriors ran away in fear. Some even knelt to Luli. "Don't be afraid," Luli shouted. "I only kill the wicked, not the innocent, the old which has done many evil things. Today, I am enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. I am Huang Tianba of the Huang family of the Heaven Tiger leader. If the Yu family wants to avenge these villains, the Huang family will accept your challenge." With that said, Luli flew the godly boat to the Palace of Black Moon. The scouts and warriors left at once to spread the shocking news. How come the Huang family has such a person? Yes, he is so young, and he is a second tribulation warrior? Is he a genius of the Huang family? I think the news will spread across the western region in a couple of days. I wonder if the Yu family will take action. The Huang family is a big family at the western region. If they start a war with the Yu family, it will be interesting. Let's not talk about this. Let's go back to the city. Thank God that the old witch is dead. Glory to the Huang family. Glory to Huang Tianba. Luli was gone, but the place was still bustling with noise and excitement. The scouts and warriors were rushing back to the city while they were talking in high spirits. Of course, Luli was using a fake name, but he knew the Huang family. He once passed by the Huang family's territory and rested there for 2 days. Chapter 2332. Luli went back to the Palace of Black Moon. Blood Fairy was still controlling the castle. The worms of the void were wreaking havoc as well. Many had died. The survivors had fled into the castle. Some were trying their best to suppress the worms of the void. "Master, this castle is a piece of treasure." Blood Fairy's message cheered Luli up. "Where is the treasure?" "The material and the patterns." Blood Fairy explained. "The material of this castle is special. I think it is similar to that piece of relic iron. If you don't believe me, you could try to attack it." Whoosh! Luli took out his flying sword and stabbed at the castle. The patterns on the castle were not activated yet. Even so, when the flying sword stabbed at the castle, there was a clanging sound and some sparks came out. "This is a treasure." Luli was overjoyed. However, because of the sudden attack, many warriors flew out from the castle. They were shocked to see Luli coming back. "Run!" These soldiers were not stupid. Some of them immediately fled in all directions, while others fled into the castle. Roar, roar, Luli let out Phantom Inspector and some Wind Warcraft to chase after them. Given the speed of Wind Warcraft, Phantom Inspector, those warriors would not be able to escape. Bang, 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 soon bodies fell to the ground. The 100 warriors that tried to escape were all killed in less than 1,000 miles. Blood Fairy, have you gained control of the patterns here? Luli did not mind the warriors in the castle. As long as the patterns were under his control, the warriors were like caged beasts. He could kill them however he wanted. "I did not," Blood Fairy explained, "but just now I could control them easily. The core of the patterns is a piece of treasure. Just now, that treasure suddenly became ownerless." "Master, did you kill the master of the castle?" "Yes." Luli nodded. Blood Fairy said, "Then it is okay. Master, I have full control of the castle. The patterns here are powerful, and there are dozens of different patterns. This castle must have had dozens of owners, and the previous owners have also repeatedly refined this castle, setting up layers and layers of divine runes. Now, this castle's defense is super strong. Even a late-stage Fourth Tribulation expert would find it difficult to break through. What? Luli was taken aback. This was just a small castle. Not even warriors at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation could break it. Blood Fairy wasn't joking. Master, I'm not joking. Blood Fairy said seriously. If you don't believe me, I can activate the glyph. Why don't you have the Wind Demon Beast and Phantom King attack me? All right. Luli was excited. He called back the Wind Warcraft and the Phantom King at once. The entire castle was glowing with cyan patterns moving around. It was as if the entire castle had come to life, and there were many little azure dragons swimming around inside. Bang, bang, bang. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Phantom King and dozens of wind demonic beasts attacked at the same time, and muffled booms sounded out. The castle trembled slightly, but it was completely unscathed. In fact, not even a single mark was left on it. What a treasure! Luli was overjoyed. This was a treasure with strong defense. If he ran into a powerful warrior, he could at least stay alive for a while by hiding in here. Luli quickly asked another important question. How's the speed? Can this castle fly? It can fly. Blood Fairy replied confidently. We'll have to see how fast it is. Master, you can enter the castle first. Don't worry about the people inside. I've trapped them all. Okay. Luli put away the Phantom King, the Wind Warcraft, and the Phantom King and flew into the castle. After a glare, Luli was teleported to a luxurious hall. Buzzing, following that, the entire castle trembled and soared into the sky, whistling into the distance. The castle was large, at least with a radius of 30 miles. It was like a mountain. There were scouts from different forces nearby. They followed Luli here. At first, they thought it was a mountain that flew up when they saw the castle of Black Moon fly up. That is the castle of Black Moon. It can fly, and the speed, the legend is true. The castle of Black Moon is a piece of treasure. Putting everything else aside, it must be as fast as a warrior at the later stage of the Fourth Tribulation. It is a pity that Huang Tianba has taken it. He deserves it. If you can kill the old witch, the treasure will be yours. The question is, do you have the ability? The group of people sighed with emotion, but the castle quickly disappeared into the eastern sky. That is quite fast. Luli used psychic power to check. He was satisfied. After some thoughts, he asked, Blood Fairy, since there are such powerful runes here, can the castle shrink? Of course. Blood Fairy answered with certainty. As a matter of fact, inside the castle is a small space refined by a powerful warrior. It has a radius of at least 300 miles and more than 100,000 rooms. Not only can people live in the rooms, but they can also trap people. There's a powerful maze in here. If you cannot solve the runes by force, and you want to go around in circles, you will be trapped here for the rest of your life. Hiss, hiss. Luli had been to many dangerous places and experienced many mazes. His eyes were filled with excitement. The treasure was too valuable. Just think about it. If he encountered a group of warriors at the middle stage of the Fourth Tribulation, he would not have to fight them. He could lure them in and trap them all. Eventually, he could kill them one by one. Buzzing, outside, the castle of Black Moon shrank into the size of a rock. After the time for several incense sticks to burn, the castle of Black Moon fell into a valley. Luli checked to make sure that nobody was around. He asked, What about the warriors? Can you kill them all? Luli did not even bother to kill those low-level warriors. Since there were powerful runes here, he could just kill them. Yes. Blood Fairy gave a simple answer. Luli did not worry anymore. He sat in a hall with his legs crossed and took out some healing pellets to treat his wounds. The old witch was dead, and so were the Fourth Tribulation warriors. Not many of the other warriors escaped. Luli had accomplished his mission successfully. The reward of 800 million was in his hands. He could set off at once. What Luli needed to do now was to heal his wounds, disguise himself, sneak into the city, and teleport to the city of him. The injuries on his body were too obvious. It would be easy for others to suspect him. so he needed to heal his injuries first. His physical body was strong enough. With the top healing pellets, he could recover quickly. In 4 hours, Luli's external wounds were almost healed. Of course, his bones and internal organs would not recover so quickly. Luli got up and was ready to leave. Buzzing, Luli left the castle of Black Moon. Many bodies were teleported out from the castle of Black Moon. They were all killed by the runes. The valley was filled with corpses. Naturally, Luli collected their interspatial rings. You can go now. Don't do evil again. Luli let out the 6 he captured. The mastermind had been killed. It did not matter whether the 6 could be killed or not. The 6 were scared out of their wits when they saw the corpses on the ground. All of them belonged to the castle of Black Moon. They fled in terror. Let's go. Luli put away the castle of Black Moon and flew away like a ghost. He was still flying toward the east. He must put on a good show. Even though the Yu family would find out by then, he should have reached the depth of the sea of mystic sounds. Chapter 23:33. The sea of mystical sound was not large compared to other seas, but it was not small either. This sea was special. There would be strange sounds coming from many places. The sounds contained some profound meanings in heaven and earth, which attracted many powerful warriors to cultivate here. There was another special feature of the sea of mystical sound. There was a kind of bird here, the redbird. There were so many of them that the entire sea was filled with them. They flew in the sky like a red cloud. Sometimes they would sing together, and their cries were pleasant. They could echo the sounds in the sea of mystical sound and play a beautiful piece of music together. Today, there was a faint white mist over the sea that stretched for thousands of miles. On one of the islands, a flock of redbirds flew by and let out soft cries. The flock of redbirds circled around the area before landing on the island. There were people on the island, a small force. They turned a blind eye to the redbirds. There was no end to the redbirds. They were used to having redbirds flying around. Whoosh, the sound of something tearing through the air came from the west. The sound was very sharp. It was the sound of something exploding at high speed. The people on the island were alarmed. From a noise, they could tell that some powerful battleships were approaching. Chirp, chirp, the redbirds were startled. They flew into the sky and into the distance, forming a cloud of fire that blotted out the sky. Battleships of the mystical sound territory. The powerful warriors on the island used psychic power to check on the 3 battleships. They were relieved to see that they were 3 huge battleships with a special symbol of a musical instrument on the front. The battleships of the mystical sound territory never got involved in the affairs of the sea of mystical sound, nor did they initiate attacks. They were just passing by. The 3 battleships glided away and soon disappeared into the distance. The people on the island were relieved. The battleships had 5 floors. Each one could accommodate thousands of people. Everyone had their own room. There were taverns and tea houses on the middle floor, so people wouldn't feel bored. The super battleships were fast. If they traveled at the top of their speed, they could cross the sea in 3 months. That being said, the speed of the battleships would be controlled. They could cross the sea in about half a year. So many redbirds. In a private room of the tea house on the 3rd floor, Lu Li, Qin Zhan, and Gan Lin were having tea. They had been out at sea for 5 days, and the waves had been calm. The 3 of them had also relaxed a little. Only then did they have the leisure to stroll around and drink tea. The tea here was not cheap. If the 3 of them were to drink it for the whole afternoon, thousands of godstones would be gone. That being said, Luli had gained 600 million divine stones from destroying the Palace of Dark Moon and obtained the interspatial rings of the Old Witch and the others. He had hundreds of millions of divine stones left in his interspatial ring, enough for the 3 of them to spend for a while. There were many people in the tea house, and the seats were almost full. It would take at most half a year to cross the divine sound sea. In such a short time, many people could not be bothered to cultivate. It was so boring in their rooms that they decided to just drink tea or to the side. Walla Lalla. After flying for more than 2 hours, there was a strong wind outside. followed by a huge wave. No matter how strong the wind or how high the waves were, they had no effect on them. However, as the waves grew bigger, a strange sound of waves rang out in everyone's ears. Gradually, the tea house became silent. Everyone was listening to the sound of the waves. Lu Li and the others stopped drinking tea and chatting. They were all listening to the strange sound of the waves. Voila, the sound of the waves did contain a strange melody. Lu Li was inspired after listening for a while. In addition to Lu Li, many others were inspired as well. But only a few could learn fundamental meanings. Many warriors settled down here, and they could not learn anything after hundreds of years. Of course, many had learned several powerful fundamental meanings. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted so many people here, and the divine sound sea wouldn't be so chaotic. 2 hours later, the sound of the waves died down. Lu Li and the others opened their eyes. Lu Li looked at Qin Zhan and Gan Lin with a smile and said, "How is it? Have you learned anything?" Qin Zhan shook his head. Gan Lin thoughtfully said, "I was a little touched, but I couldn't grasp it when I wanted to." Ha ha ha. Lu Li laughed. He took a sip of tea and said, "Don't worry. The more anxious you are, the harder it is for you to get something. Take it easy. Maybe you will find something unexpected. You guys talk. I will sit on the deck for a while." Gan Lin suddenly stood up. Qin Zhan looked over. There were more than a dozen people sitting on the deck with their eyes closed. Qin Zhan couldn't sit still anymore. He nodded and said, "I will go as well. Let's see if we can learn anything in the next couple of months." "Go. I will call you if I need anything." Lu Li waved his hand. He could understand that they were eager to improve their abilities. They were stimulated by him. Lu Li didn't go to the deck to cultivate. As he said, if he was lucky, it didn't matter where he was. Maybe he could learn something while drinking tea here. Splash, splash, splash. After 4 hours, the wind started blowing outside again, and the god's voice rang out again. More and more people went to the deck. Lu Li listened for another 2 hours, but still gained nothing. He didn't want to listen anymore. He closed his eyes and enjoyed the tea by himself. It was rare for him to be so relaxed. After a while, Lu Li felt bored. He walked out of the tea house, walked around on the deck, and went back to the tavern. The tavern was full of drunkards. There wasn't much to see. Lu Li walked to the deck at the back of the battleship. He took a casual glance, and his eyes glowed. On the deck stood a pretty lady, a young and pretty lady. The woman was wearing a black silk dress that was rather tight, revealing her graceful figure. From Lu Li's angle, he could see the side of her face. Her face was like jade, and her facial features were exquisite. She was a rare beauty. The lady was looking at the waves in the distance with a frown. There was a hint of sadness on her face, which made people feel sorry for her. There were many good-looking women, but few with temperament. This lady was one of them. Just by standing there, she could evoke the desire of any man to protect her. Lu Li looked away after one look. There were many pretty ladies, but he was not in the mood to flirt with them. He glanced around and saw an old man standing not far away from the woman. The old man had a respectful expression on his face, which made him slightly curious. The old man was powerful. Even though he couldn't tell, Lu Li could tell that he was at least at the middle stage of the fourth tribulation or even at the latter stage. The old man stood on the side with respect. Lu Li stared at the lady, and the old man sent a warning look. Some men stared at the lady, but didn't dare to come closer. What did it mean? It meant that the old man was the lady's escort, her subordinate. The lady must have a high status to be able to have such a powerful warrior as her escort. She might be a young lady of a super family. Lu Li didn't dare to provoke a lady like this. He turned around and was ready to go back. Right at that moment, the lady suddenly turned to Lu Li and said, "You are young Master Huang Tianba, right? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."